how are we serving our campuses? And we do give them a lot of autonomy now. I always go out, like we never as you said, as we know, since Dr. Strother had been here, there is no curriculum police. We don't, the only thing they have to teach are the TEKS. The way they do it is up to them as long as they hit the target. So along with that, though, it's developing us as central administrators to be thinking like we are a menu of services. And if we have a service that nobody is requesting, then maybe I don't need that coordinator or director. So it really puts us on notice as well that how are we providing the best quality service and serving the needs of our principals and our campuses. So fourth is our final lever. Amy Shields, can you read this one?
Evaluate and design a central office to ensure that maximum resources are distributed to schools. Establish and define school autonomy provisions and timelines. Design and implement student-based budgeting processes and supports.
So we kind of stepped into this year a little bit, right? So principals and my campus principals who are here, JC gave you, instead of us in central office, we're cutting all assistant principals. He said, no, this is your money. This is the amount that needs to cut for us to make the budget. You tell us who's being cut. And so, yeah, I've worked in districts before where it's always been that, okay, everybody's cutting counselor, everybody's cutting this. And so the idea is, no, we give the autonomy back on the principal. And so what's really important and what's great about our district is we have some of the highest quality principals across the state. I would put all of our principals up against anyone because we have really strong leadership. But that's what the key is having that strong leadership. And so I know I used an example this morning of not just with, not just with your budget, but also your hiring practices, okay? So I know sometimes in the past I've had conversations with principals where I see, oh, this teacher's not doing so well, right? Oh, Ms. Castro, give her another year. Well, wait a minute, no. You're gonna give her this another year. She has 80% of her seats are low quality, and can we afford that to our kids? Can kids have another year where a teacher isn't effective? And then it changes to, okay, I give you that autonomy, but if you don't hit our performance framework that we designed, it's not Ms. Castro that's going before the board. It is that principal that is explaining to our board members, to our community, this is why I chose an adult over what's best for kids. So it's that type of thinking, different mentality. So what's wonderful that when I bring up about what's best for kids, this board, under Ms. O'Steve's leadership, under Dr. Spedler's leadership, we're already there. As we've shared this morning, and Shannon shared, that we were one of the first school districts that volunteered to be part of Lone Star Governance, which the focus is on student outcomes. So a lot of this groundwork has already been placed, which is making our jobs that much easier for us to fall in line for what the expectations of the state and Michael Rath are doing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Shannon, who's from Engage, to share with us next steps. Before I go on, board members who are here, is there any questions, anything popping up? Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And I'd like to see you all again. This group in this room, I want the board members to know, has been working today. They have been working. I actually just tweeted it out. I was like, we have been working, capital W-O-R-K, today. So it's exciting to be back today working with you as a board and with the leadership in the district because we've had a long journey together. And really, I feel like today is when it's all coming together. And that feels really good. And like Melinda just mentioned, Dr. Saavedra is leaving a great legacy because really what you've done as a district and leadership is you're putting all of the pieces together that the state is putting forward right now. And really, I think this is one of the first districts that I know of that really is putting it all together. So you've got your strategic design, you've got your school performance framework now that's been designed by the community. You already had volunteered to do Lone Star Governance and had started down that pathway. We worked on that together. And then you have a learning framework for the classroom. So all of those pieces coming together now with really addressing the SGS levers, really you have everything in place. So today is just about looking at and making sure, okay, is there anything we need to tweak to make a little bit of alignment happen? So that's what we did this morning. We looked through all of those pieces and we said, where are we aligned? And pretty much everything was aligned. There were a few things on the board goals and constraints that the team worked on this morning that we're going to share this afternoon and look at and say, okay, how does this lay out? And then put the final stamp of approval on all of those pieces together. So I really appreciate, there was a lot of deep thinking going on in this room. I had no idea you were new. You were just like right in there, like doing everything with everybody else. So it was great. It was a lot of deep thinking here this morning. So I want to share with you a couple things about what we're going to do today. But first, I'm going to ask you and your teams to share with each other what your expectations are. So we have, how long do we have?
We have till 5.
Okay, so we have about 4 hours to be together this afternoon, and I want you to think about what are you hoping to get out of that 4 hours to make sure that we're meeting your expectations. So if you don't mind sharing that at your tables for a few minutes. And we did some team roles this morning, so if you are the time manager at that table, can you set the time? Let's take 5 minutes to do that. Everybody make sure you share your expectations for our time, and then we'll hear from each team.
So we're on constraint number 2, 1. Oh, 1. Attendance for students and attendance for education. I know that we had this morning, and I think it's just going to be the same thing as active participation. And that was it, right? Yeah. What are your expectations for today? And then what? Oh, sorry. So the expectations today, I think, was just trying to put all the things together and making sure. What was it this morning?
By this morning. No, we said that, remember that we wanted to make sure that all that everything was aligned. Like our school performance framework and all the stuff we design, our board goals and all these grades were all aligned together. And that's what we, right? Like the outcomes. Yeah.
So that was our expectation.
Team number 2.
There's some good in it.
So did we put where did we put did we put it at each table? I mean, at each place? Or did they bring it?
Did they print it? I'm sorry, that's not what that is? That's what I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, those are the old ones. We'll just wait. That way there's
The last week, so I assumed that I remember us coming up with a plan, but I wasn't there.
Okay, so if y'all are good, make sure you use the protocol, put our check mark, so we know.
Okay. Communications, you can choose someone from your table to share out your expectations. Who wants to go first? Oh, sure. Great.
Okay. So for our table, our expectations today is to make, so for the expectation at our table was that, that we're all here and that we're able to have a creative dialogue in making sure that everyone knows what the next steps are. But before that, that we are in agreement that what the next steps should be, and so that everyone here has that opportunity. And that was our expectation for the table.
Okay. Fantastic. Let's go, Oakley.
And our expectation is that we are all aligned with systems of grade school and our,
Sorry.
yeah, the strategic design. Like, not me up, I'm like, hello. And our strategic design, that we're all aligned and we all understand. And we're clear.
Very good. Thank you.
That's okay. Nobody else
Kind of just echoing what she said, just making sure that we understand how all three align with each other. But also kind of like what you talked about, what action steps, or what activities, or what training is going to be required for us to meet these.
That's good. That's good. What does it take to implement it?
Correct.
It's one thing to plan it, right?
Yes.
It's another thing to make it happen. That's great. Yes.
And we talked about putting it together in a package, so not only that it's aligned and easily understood, but also that we're able to communicate it to all of our school communities.
That's great. Still need that football play.
Yeah, Robert? Oh, yeah.
That's right. Amy, did you have anything?
Yeah, we talked about, of course, the alignment of all of our pieces, but we also talked about just, we all bring different perspectives to this, and that I think, we talked about listening to the different perspectives, and that will only make our product richer.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Very good. Does someone have anything?
To kind of piggyback on what everybody else is saying, we also, this one you brought up a good point, and linking that bridge between board and administration and faculty, staff, and parents and students, just kind of linking it all together so it all makes sense, and just kind of, like Priscilla said, just kind of packaging everything to a point where it's understood and transparent for them.
That's great. That's one of the things that does really create, if you want to talk about implementation, you have a great plan. I mean, who facilitated it, but. No, it really is not us. It's y'all have a great plan. Your community has really come together. Everyone's been very actively involved and been creative, been aspirational. You have a great plan. The next step is making that actionable, right? And really a big part of that is, this part of it is just knowing where you all stand with each other as leadership and being able to communicate in a uniform way so that other folks can be part of that and have access to it, right? Because it's all in how, it's actually about perceptions and perspectives, right? It's all how people perceive it. So the more clearly and enthusiastically you're able to communicate about the direction, it helps people to not have fear about going forward and making change. It helps people to be excited about it and optimistic about it and want to be part of that. And so the way that you've done your planning process is awesome because you've included so many people in the planning from the beginning of it. I mean, it's been very inclusive, so people own this, but there's a whole other constituency still that hasn't been part of it that will need to be communicated to in a way that they feel like it's theirs too, that they own it as well. So that's a very important next step. And today is really going to help with that because you're going to get to talk with each other and hear and develop that common language informally and formally, and then obviously come to agreement on some pieces that will align that you can put forward. So I think that's great. I think we can accomplish all of these expectations in the time that we have. So I feel very confident about that. Excellent. So we are going to start looking at the alignment pieces. Did y'all want to add anything? Did y'all?
We did.
Team 6, okay.
That's when the
I
phone
knew you did. I remember when the phone went off. Okay. Yeah, that cleared, blinked my mind. So, we, as Engaged to Learn, we have a mission, and our mission is to ensure that the neighborhood public school is the first choice for American families. That's very important to us as an organization, because if people start choosing to go away from their neighborhood public schools and outside of their community to get their education, that changes the structure of our society. And we do not think that that is in the best interest of any of us. And so we really believe that that community focus needs to be there. And so Delinda said this earlier, that people make choices about their schools, and they definitely do that now. There are choices out there. San Antonio especially, actually, seems to be, this area seems to be targeted for choices of schools to come in and try to take enrollment away from the public schools that are already here. So I think you are obviously, once again, on the cutting edge of saying, hey, let's create choice and make sure that our schools are the #1 choice. So they're not, it's no longer that you just go by default, but that families would say, that's where I want to be. I don't care what choices I have, that's where I want to be, that's the first choice. So we are honored to have been your partner in the journey of what you're trying to get done with the call to action. So this is your call to action, and you didn't say this in this meeting?
Well, we said it this morning.
We said it this morning.
Yeah, we said it, we started
Okay.
this morning.
I was like, I don't want to lead it. I don't know how to do all that stuff. Girls, but this is your call to action that you guys really follow. And we talked about this morning how this is really aligned to everything we're going to be discussing this afternoon, including Systems of Great Schools, because it's all about choices and options and making those great options available to everyone. So we're at that time when we're going to try to take that vision and turn it into reality. Delinda talked about these, and so I don't think we need to spend much more time on this, but one thing I will say is part of this process, because we customize to you, is that with your strategic design, we helped you create your school performance framework. So that is accomplishing that first lever of the SGS process. Why school performance framework? It's such a great way to communicate, like we've been talking about. And if you can't measure what you're doing in a way that makes sense and is valid, you don't have any way to create better options or see what's working well. So that's really what it's about, creating that holistic picture. You have one, as Delinda pointed out, in your folder. Did everyone find that when she mentioned it? Okay, so you're going to want to take that out, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at, we're going to start with looking at how do those 4 levers that she mentioned are at the top. You see them at the top of that school performance framework. Those are listed up there. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, with those 4 components of the Systems of Great Schools, how do those things relate to the strategic design? So we're going to say, how does the call to action, the learner outcomes, learner profile, etc., and those levers, how do they relate to this strategic design framework? So at your table, you're also right behind that school performance framework, there's a workspace. And on that workspace, you're going to see where you're going to be able to take that in your strategic design, which you should have a brochure. You'll have a brochure for the strategic design. Okay, perfect. So you're going to use those components. And at your table, you're going to think through, and you don't have to do this individually, you can do it as a team, but you should all have the information. You're going to think through how these things align. So if you look at the workspace, we'll give you all just a couple of little directions.
Make sure y'all have the afternoon folder, it has a pink dot.
Yes, afternoon folders are in the middle of the table with pink dot. Every person gets one of the white folders with a pink dot. Yep. And inside that, on the left-hand side, is where you'll find this workspace. That's what we're going to work from. So what you're going to do is, what's on this workspace is on the left-hand side, it has every piece of your strategic design. So that's also in the brochure if you want to see it all together. But you'll see your call to action that we just looked at. You'll see your learner outcomes that you're working towards. You'll see your learner profile, the learner profile skills. And then you'll see all the belief statements, which many of you, how many people, raise your hand if you were on the strategic design team. How many people in this room are on the strategic design team? Okay, so you probably remember a few, discussions about some of these beliefs, right? I'm sure. And then on the back, you'll see the strategies, okay? So this is all your work, and the idea that what we're going to do right now is say, okay, this is the strategic design that this community has come to agreement on. How does that align to this philosophy of Systems of Great Schools that you're embarking on? And one thing I will say is, You can think about your strategic design as this is what we're trying to get done, and the Systems of Great Schools is, this is a way to make this happen, right? So you can start to think about it that way. So what I want you to do as a table team is you can just write over here on the right-hand side the connection that you see between the Systems of Great Schools, the philosophy itself, or the levers, specific levers to that component of the strategic design framework, okay? So time managers, let's go 7 minutes. Okay, 7 minutes, time managers, and communications, can you take the check marks down, and then if you finish before the 7 minutes, you can put it back up, or you can let me know if you need more time. It's about 7 minutes.
Okay, so y'all, just to make sure we're clear, managing school performance is lever 1, expanding great options is lever 2, improve access to options is 3, and foster school autonomy is 4. Okay. Yes.
Can y'all put lever 2 first?
Yeah.
The expanding great options?
You want me to go back to it?
Let me, hold on. Lorena?
So the idea, so y'all need, so like lever 2, the idea is if we have a great thing, then we expand that. If we have not such a good thing, we call it quality schools, so we can partner with them to take it. Right, and that's where it's going to depend on our school performance framework. It's going to be very transparent, there'll be 900 schools, it'll be at the top. And that's expanded, yeah. But that great option is based on that school performance framework. You want the definition?
They can share their work.
Okay, so for call to action, increasing the level of they create. I don't know if y'all put this, I think one and options. What did y'all put? You put 2, expanding great options. You didn't think about fostering school autonomy because of the future they create, giving them that.
So the management empowerment is establishing a school performance framework.
But doesn't this,
It's basically.
doesn't this call to action expect our students to be able to be empowered?
Assessing, right, that's what it is. And then the expanding.
Yeah, but I was trying to, isn't it a little bit on fostering
Is
schools?
looking for the quality of the school and by internal partners.
That's just this counselor.
So within the school, you know that there's issues, and so you're able
So
to.
Almers, so what did y'all say were program outcomes?
Number 3, is a school tutor at all costs, that means it solicits them from the.
That's one on that. Yeah, all learners will demonstrate their thinking in a creative
And
and
then the
innovative
fourth one
manner.
is autonomy, so basically giving their, it's
Is
autonomy.
that expands choice? Demonstrate honor and integrity.
And that's just, that's put it on there.
Oh.
We had the afternoon, where they say like the same, what are those friends? So I'm just like, ad libbing, like, okay, that works for all. No wonder.
I would say 1 and 4, because we can do this to act independently, that's called, right? Enable them to act independently.
Yes.
Leadership. That
So
was,
idea number 3, for the innovative and challenging problems.
Four's gotta be.
well, 4's gotta be somewhere in there. I just, okay, so that will be a question that we need our person to grade on either done. And that's a question we need to define, because we're trying to get student autonomy without being under.
Strategic school actions,
Yeah.
such as replicating, taking aggressive action, and launching.
I was gonna say all of this, I was like,
So strong support system for school communication, activities, would that be 2 and 3 as well? Creative and innovative. Or all?
1, 2, 3,
1 to 3.
1 and 4.
1 and 4.
I was gonna say all of this,
Right.
because all of the appropriate skills that's modeled with the school performance. Okay?
construct engagement in the community that goes to
I think
Say that again?
we believe in
Okay, so now we're believing. We believe in
And then
constructive
one and two.
engagement of the school community for the success of our district.
that was the
Engagement, that's 2, that's 3. Yeah. 2.
Right, because you're managing, like you're right, so when you're replicating.
So custody relationships among the district.
That's what I was.
I was going to say that there.
And so the last one.
It says adult leadership advice. Strategy. And I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed, I'm so sorry. Says it again.
And she did, we just have, we realize it. She's just like, she's much more intuitive, observant, she like takes it all the details.
Establishing.
What about number 1?
Yeah.
She's really, yeah,
Because it's
we're very,
establishing primary customers.
very
Yes.
she looks like, that sounds like fun, her personality there is exactly the same, and then the opposite with her son, so many other things, she's just like Mark, but his personality is just like mine. So when you have like these opposite things, so we're all just like, yeah, it's like I appreciate this, like, we're very different. She was like, you're stressing me out. I was like, I'm not even, you're not even, I'm not even like, she's like, I don't know that's what you do. She's like, you're doing everything so fast. I'm just like, oh yeah, we're searching for everything, actually, for parents and yeah, we're like,
You're sharing what y'all did this week. Like what y'all could on this month. Okay, that's fine. We're just making sure that what y'all thought was Oh, which one?
3 and 4. We're on strategy.
Okay, so give me a check mark or more time. You can use the 2 or the 5, but not the 10. And not the 2 and 5 together. So I said you 5 minutes going up. Okay. So time managers, can you set your times for 5 more minutes? Your time pieces for 5 more minutes? No. No hour. 5 minutes is this. Okay, so we're going 5 more minutes.
Kind of like some of the same here.
No, say 4.
My phone. No, I know.
She's like, she's like the witch. Now, Paige, I did, you can do that.
I mean, a lot. I like to argue. He's trying to balance.
And they're like, they're like Colton. The price, it's like, yeah, but plus the time. Yeah. I'll look at it and see if I should take my dry cleaning myself.
I know. I need to
And that's just there's a actually so we all buy it. And then the one that started by three of us. Because we're all like, shoes and became this whole like, hey, where's the bargain? And it was awesome.
You know, we had it all. She's a favorite of both of ours, so we can't wear them here. So she goes, are you wearing our suit or not? She's like, if you bring our suit.
She was always so scared of one. Take all the part we need by the what we can do. And that's what we can
Pretty much you could just, those are interchangeable.
Once you do that
Let's do this. You may not be quite finished, but let's do this. Let's just have each table. I just want you to make a statement, just kind of a reflection on your process. So just think together for a minute. Something that you saw that was aligned, some reflection that you may have from doing this activity. And so y'all can talk in your teams for 30 seconds and then share out. What's one reflection you have? Hey, but you're doing something.
On me.
Discovered
Well, nothing is
so I know
But what we did right now is our
And it's actually that it's a different process. They really do mesh.
Yeah, it does. Well, me, it was, for me, it was hard. Scott was a good partner.
but on there, it's really sorry.
And even though this gets pretty deep.
I just read the class on grade 2.
Yeah, so they just presented their
You know what I was thinking? Because I've never seen this
They just
before.
presented their designs.
But I think this would be.
Okay, team leaders. Team leaders, can I see your hands? Team leaders, where are you?
Team lead. Go.
Team leader.
Team leaders? Okay, awesome. Can you choose someone to share out from your team, please? And have that person stand up?
Cindy, just stand up.
Oh. Okay, all right, you're gonna go first.
Oh, you?
Yes.
We talked about, just concluding our conversation about how we can make a case for all of the levers for all things, in one way or another, because they're directly aligned. But of course, we took the process of looking up, defining what the levers were, and you got online. We talked about those and how we could connect each little piece, but as you look at it as a whole, that they're connected to all the levers.
That's great. That's great. Did you go to the Systems of Great Schools?
No, I went into the drive, into the.
Okay, great. There is but we did put a link to that. It's a great website that does that, so that's awesome. So you just saw alignment across everything really, which is really encouraging. Fantastic. Another team, want to share your reflection? Yes.
So our big takeaway was that we were pretty aligned. As we went through each of the strategies there, we could see how each lever could fit with them, and we were able to select very specific examples to justify why we thought that. So it's really refreshing that after all of this work, it's paid off because it's pretty cohesive and aligned.
That's great. Y'all could have shown the state what to do, basically. Okay, just take our strategic design. Is it for the whole state? Get it?
We also talked about how a lot of the levers were consistent across all of the beliefs, but one of the things that we looked at this time that we hadn't looked at this morning was the connection to the board goals. And one of the things that we really noticed is half of our beliefs we felt there was a direct correlation to our board goals, but then there were some that was very indirect or kind of a vague correlation. So we were kind of wondering and reflecting on is, maybe there needs to be a little more alignment between the beliefs and the board goals.
Okay, that's great. Great reflection. So when we get to the board goals, we'll bring that up and see. It is really important. Obviously the beliefs, those of you that were a part of the process, or even if you weren't, you probably heard, but the beliefs are like a bedrock of, the reason why we use beliefs as the beginning of strategic design is because that's the bedrock of what will be actionable in this community. You can write plans all day long, but if it's not based on your aligned core values, beliefs of your community, it's not going to become actionable. So that's the reason you start there, and that's the reason you use that, like this team did, for a filter for everything that you're trying to put into action. Is it aligned to our beliefs? If it's not, guess what? It's not going to work. It's not going to work in this community, and that's unique to every community. That's why we believe at Engage to Learn, like it has to be a locally designed solution. So actually, your strategic design wouldn't work for the whole state because the whole state's not you. So it has to be really unique to your local community. But this is something I think is really important, and maybe in your communication pieces. Because Systems of Great Schools is going to be a new concept for people, and it's going to be a different kind of philosophy than what people are used to. But it's aligned to your beliefs. That's what you saw. It's aligned to your beliefs that your community had, separate from SGS. Now you're looking at it and you're saying, wow, that's really aligned to the beliefs we already had. I think that's really important in your communication pieces as well, to say, this actually aligns to our values. If it didn't, if it was in conflict with it, I would hope, I believe that you wouldn't choose to embark on it. Because if it wasn't really aligned to your values, you wouldn't choose as a district to go down that path. So I think that's important. Thank you. John, oh,
That was the same observation that we were going to say what Nikki just said.
really? Even the board goals?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
because we
Okay.
did notice that.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we will definitely want to look at that. That's great.
Ours is the same about the overlap.
Okay,
All the levers.
okay. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of language that fits in with the philosophy system of the schools. So you had things like personal growth, communication, open-minded, adaptable. So I think it fits in with the whole philosophy, and we also think it fits in with all the goals. So we'll talk about that later too.
That's great. I saw you looking at the self-assessment
Yes.
framework, which is great because, yeah, that's a way to see, where are we on that? And really, it's more at this upper level, right, when you start looking at the assessment. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Okay, awesome. And y'all are, of course, already ahead of the game. So we're also going to look at the board goals. So, excellent. Let me get past our little activity here. So you have all these pieces, okay? And I just actually made this slide after this morning because I thought it would be important for us to think about all of them together. What you want is what's in your strategic design, what's in your board goals, right, from Lone Star Governance, and what's in your school performance framework. That's this is what you want. And how you get there is really through SGS and your learning framework. Those are the pieces that will help you get there. So I think that that's kind of how all these things go together, and that's what I want y'all to discuss just a little bit more in depth. Now, the next piece is how does your learning framework relate to your strategic design, and then we're going to put it all together, learning framework, strategic design, levers, and governance. So on your strategic design brochure, you'll see that learning framework, and also there is in your team folder, there is a visual that has, yes, it's on the left-hand side. That's it, Lee, you mind holding that up? It looks like this. Lee's showing you in your team folder, you'll see a visual like that, or like this, actually. I guess I have it. So we're just gonna spend, yeah, in the gray team folder, So you'll have one for the table. So we're gonna spend the next few minutes now pulling the rest of it together. Yes, Dylan?
So, can I go into a bit on the learning framework? Because I'm not sure if board members have been, because it's not really, this isn't in their lane, but I wanted to make sure that they knew. So on the learning framework, you go back to where it's up, and there you go. So, board members, just so y'all know that what we expect, when we first do our strategic design and had our learner profile, and if we have these high expectations of integrity and innovative and creativity, and that's what we expect our students to graduate with, then we have to redesign, well then, what does that classroom look like in order to produce those skill sets? So what came up is, this is the pencil, it's connect, inquire, involve, elaborate, and master. So our expectation for teachers is students have got to see this in their day as they go through their school day, okay? And something you may not, but what this also does is for a teacher, they can hit, this is a live, it's not live for y'all, but like, they can hit the connect button, they get all of these resources at grade level, aligned to the TEKS, that's connecting activities.
Wow.
They can hit master, and they have access, and so it's not just South Sam, it's like all of the districts that Engage partner with, if they created this cool thing, then they put, so it connects, so therefore, teachers have the access to, oh, well, I don't know how to elaborate activity, just hit the button, all of these activities and support come up by grade level and by content. So I knew, right, it's a lot, right, and aligned to our standards. So I know, all of us know this because we live it every day, but board members, we haven't really gone into depth about that. So I just want to make sure y'all knew that when she said the learning framework, that's the pencil is our learning framework. Like,
Yes, absolutely. And again, we followed the same design process for this
yes.
that we did with strategic design. So like Delinda said, you had your learning
Yes, it was
profile.
created by teachers,
It was
but
created by
yes,
teachers,
yes.
students,
Mhm.
administrators, community parents.
Yep.
So we still had all those folks involved in creating this because we asked the question, if these are the skills you want for kids, how are you going to get those, right? And this was the result. This is what came from that group to say, okay, well, this is the experience they would have to have. And, this is, Engage to Learn is my company, and I was an educator. And for a long time, I would see people create these graduate profiles. They'd have this list of skills and say, this is what we want all kids to have. And that's all fine and dandy, but then I would go in classrooms and it's like, well, I don't know how them sitting there listening all day or filling out a worksheet is going to get that graduate profile, right? So there was a disconnect between saying we want these skills and then what was happening in the classroom every day. So we actually designed this process at Engage to Learn because for us, it's not just about like putting something on a plaque on the wall. It's like what's really happening for kids in the classroom every day. And so this is unique to South San Antonio. The process, we use it with other districts, but this is yours. Like you designed this. You're the only ones that have this learning framework because it matches your learner profile to make sure that those kids get experiences every day that make sure they end up with those skills. So this we talked about this morning is going to be consistent no matter what choices they have in terms of the school focus or theme or particular career path or whatever. This will still be a part of their experience every day to make sure they have those skills because those apply across all career paths, all options that they would have. So you have that piece as well. And so that's what I want y'all to do just a little bit is talk at your table again about how all these go together because part of this day is about getting common language and common understanding like many of you shared in your expectations. So the first question is, looking at that learning framework and hearing about that, and if you have other questions and asking people at your table that would know the answers, how does the learning framework itself relate to the strategic design? How does it make sure that what you want in the strategic design is fulfilled? Okay, so time managers, let's go 3 minutes on this question at your table.
So they're using this?
Yes, using the strategic design framework, looking at the learner profile skills especially on there, and then that other visual. Okay, 3 minutes. Go.
I don't have that. Hey, this is, you're gonna take this over.
I think they cut go back and make sure that we're up to date with this. Then this stays
Like, yeah.
like exactly what you said.
Seriously, I think that's actually.
Living and breathing, it needs to be able to change as times change and not be stagnant. Okay, well, this is what it was, but now it's easier. And I think if that's the case and all of these pieces and classes continue to be living documents, then this will always be successful.
And I think too that we just, yeah, they all talk about outcome goals.
If goal one is defined individually,
all that, the outside has to be guided forward
I would like to do
what is happening here, what's happening to the kids.
and say, okay, we want to see where it's now, but product aside,
All of our coaches
We're 24.
But also they're put together all of our games.
within the program resource settings, and so the generation, all of that for
Yeah, and I mean that, like, we're already on the same. So you're doing well.
Okay, ready?
Well.
Brown, well, let's hear. You want to share?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so I compared, we have all these great clusters or components that are all out there. I compared it to an offensive play. You know, we have our linemen over here, we have our running backs over here, our receivers over here. And we bring it all together, we're going to be successful on
Win the game.
winning the game.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Way to go, coach.
That's great. Anybody else want to share something you're going to try to top that?
We talked about how all of these facets obviously come together to give us what's in the pencil, but it needs to be living and breathing, and it needs to be revisited as we revisit it to make sure we're aligned correctly with what the expectations of today.
That's great.
And so as long as we felt as long as that was being revisited and all the other facets, then we'll be able to continue to be true to this, to the outcomes that were in the pencil.
That's great. That's great. Living. Yeah. Praise the Lord. Awesome. Okay, so let's go to round two. Round two is asking the question, if you look at, again, the learning framework and you look at the learner profile skills, how can you see a direct connection and look at the exact profile skills in that strategic design? Can you see a direct connection between those steps in the learning framework like Delinda was mentioning and the skills that you see in your learner profile that your community said, this is what we want? Remember, you had community members, business people, employers, parents saying, these are the skills that we want. And so can you see a direct connection, and how can you see a direct connection between those two? So let's take 2 minutes on that. Go ahead, in your slide.
Spark governs our
So it may not be in the classroom, but within they should outside. And right now, it's current events, restriction and those foreign navigate. You know, and overcome any.
Yeah, I mean, actually we're going to meet
A whole point of well-rounded.
we have a lot of jokes they want me on
Very good. Perfect.
Okay. A reflection? What reflection do you have on the learner profile skills and the learning framework? Yes.
We talked about how the learning framework basically provides the steps of how to get to the learning profile.
Great. Perfect. Were you able to see, like, from some certain skills in the learner profile, exactly where they might relate to one of the steps? Okay. Well, that's good, because that's exactly how it was designed. Because we literally took the learner profile and said, if you wanted these skills, what would you do? And we actually mapped them. We had the team map them to the steps. So that's where it came from. So, board members, if you are going in classrooms in the district, you should be seeing these things happening in classrooms, right? You could go in and say, oh, we're in the choir step right now, I can tell, and see what's happening. Awesome. Okay, so round 3 is, again, like I said, pulling it all together. So you've got the learning framework, the strategic design framework, and then you've got your systems of great schools that we've already talked about today. So round 3 is just how do those things relate to the systems of great schools. And some of you have already kind of gotten understood it, sounds like, but we'll just take a couple more minutes to do that before we go into the board goals. So let's go 2 more minutes to answer this question at your table.
If we can make this is what will get us our high. This will get us our high quality. Because all of this is based on that management. How are they going to do? And this is what gets that.
What teacher they have, what program they're in. Just all tied together, allow them to all the checks that want to be done, ensure that they're able to have
And
Really,
honestly, this is the thing, and that's why so we always think it's all that way, and that's what we're trying to be. Yeah, so it's the data, way to look at it, not just like
that was, basically caring for Betty. And so a couple people knew that we said, I said that she was the first one she went over to.
Which is
Okay. Reflection on that. How does it relate to the systems of great schools with your strategic design framework? Yes.
We talked about how if we focus on high quality instruction, that inherently takes care of the levers, especially lever 1, managing school performance. And also, if we're talking about drilling down to specific students, that really speaks to the system of great schools and focusing on the percentage of students in high quality.
That's great. Kids and speeds. Did you want to add?
What we were saying was that over and over, we keep just talking about how all of this is relatable and how it works together. So it was just like, again, saying it again. But this time, relating it to everyone. So taking us in this room and taking it to our campuses, our departments, everyone we work with, and making sure that we're all using the same consistent vocabulary and communicating it, so that when a teacher or anyone really is representing the school district, they're able to communicate what are options, or what is their school or department doing to establish that autonomy on their own, what makes them stand out. And then as soon as that's able to be communicated, it's just going to be relatable to everyone throughout the district.
One thought I had related to that is, so if you look at everything that's in that strategic plan, and you look at what's in the learning framework, if you have a campus that's fully implementing the strategic plan and fully implementing the learning framework, that's probably going to be the one that is scoring the highest performance of the school performance framework that you're going to want to replicate. So part of the conversation might be, what systems did you put in place to implement at this level? How did you get the learning framework in every classroom? How are you getting every teacher in this campus to really implement at that level? And we're seeing this active engagement with kids in every classroom.
Right.
So it's almost like when you do those things that you've already said you want to do really well, when that's happening in any place, you're going to have the high quality seats. So then it's just a matter of replicating that, because those are going to show up on the school performance framework. So I think it's kind of interesting to think about how you have all those pieces together. Okay, so how do we measure all this to make sure we're making progress? You know where you want to go, and that is really the intention of Lone Star Governance, as you know. So the intention of Lone Star Governance is to provide a model for schools and school boards to improve student outcomes, to make sure that you're getting where you want to go with students. And you guys have volunteered to be part of that process, and it's a perfect complement to everything else that we've created. So y'all know the roles. We've done that before. And what we're going to do now is say, okay, let's look at the board goals and constraints and see how that aligns to everything else we've just looked at, okay? So one thing that's happened this morning is we went through that process, and the team that's here put all their great minds and computers and data and all kinds of resources to this, and went back and looked at those goals, constraints after they did the same kind of alignment activity, and so they have some recommendations for you. So these are the previous goals that we had, the 3 board goals for the superintendent that we had before. And these are the previous constraints that we had before. And then as you know, board trustees, that you have 3 progress measures under each one of the goals, and then 3 progress measures under each one of the constraints. Okay, so we had that in the past. And of course, we have the constraints for the board as well, because you know the board has to be constrained, right? It's a joke. So what we're going to do now is these groups were working on looking at that alignment, and what they're going to share with you is what they came up with in terms of taking the goals, the original goals and progress measures, and how those might be tweaked a little bit to be better in alignment and using the data that they had available to them. So I'm going to ask the goal in 1 group, which this is the hard one, the hardest one. I think it was the hardest one. It took the longest. And Diana, do you mind sharing, just giving each table a set of the finals? So what we did was we took what routines came up with this morning, and we made a little side-by-side. And so each table will have this side-by-side to be able to look at. So our goal here is to look at the goals, the constraints, and the progress measures, and see what we can determine by that. Team 1, if you want to come up and begin to offer Team 1, all of you, and we can talk and support them.
Okay, so this is where we also, just FYI, this is where we really need everyone dialed in, because these are our recommendations to the board on what adjustments we think that need to happen. Our recommendations on the board Lone Star governance goals. Of course, as board members, as you know, Associate Ms. Flores, Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Padilla, you know, it doesn't work for you, kick it back. But this was our morning's work. We looked very carefully on what the expectations are for Lone Star governance, aligning it to SGS. And so again, I want, please be very candid. please, you know what I mean, write questions down and we'll go into more detail. But we really want honest feedback. You know, no one's running for prom queen in here or prom king, and so we can't get better unless we hear your honest feedback, okay? So with that,
So maybe we should, to your point, Delinda, maybe everyone should stand up, because we have been sitting for like an hour.
okay.
So maybe everyone should stand up and get 3 hugs or handshakes somewhere in the room and come back to your seat. Get the blood flowing again to the brain. Okay, awesome. So at your table, at your table you have some
So post-it notes, here we go, post-it notes. Everybody want to see? Here we go.
Everybody needs some post-it notes?
Post-it notes in your bags, in your supply. So, everyone needs post-it notes and this is why. As they are sharing their recommendations and the rationale for the recommendations, what I want you to do, rather than interrupting or asking questions at the time, is if you will record your questions, thoughts, comments about that. You can do it on post-it notes. You can actually write on this workspace that we gave you that also has the side-by-side. Either way, but I want you to record your questions, comments, thoughts, feedback. Like Delinda said, we definitely want the feedback. And then we'll go through each of the presentations, we'll record all of those, and then after that, we'll go back and like look at each one of them and make revisions or changes or answer the questions. Okay, makes sense. All right, T1, go for it. Yes, ready. Go lead.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Now, I just want a disclaimer, I don't agree with anything that we came up with. Notice they stood on that side of the This one was a little difficult. We struggled actually quite a bit in going through TEA, contacting our folks over at the campus and trying to get data and information. And so this one, we have to be a little open-minded because there's a difference between what TEA reports and a difference between what actually happens. And it sounds a little convoluted, and it kind of is. Simply because as TEA evolves and as TEA is pressured by community, society, the opening of charter schools, things of that nature, there's a constant adjustment. They're always adjusting something. So therefore, what I tell you is happening now isn't going to be the same thing that's going to be measured 2 or 3 years from now. So the continuous evolving of those expectations and the requirements in order to report to TEA, they're always changing. And so there's kind of a certain way we have to look at it in order for us to really take an actual picture of what's truly happening for our students and all the success that they're seeing. And I'll kind of explain that as we go through this. So we did make some adjustments to the goal and a couple of the measures. So do y'all have the side by side? Y'all have it?
Yeah, they have it. They have the original.
So
and then
the original obviously is on the left. So if you look over to the right, we made a minor adjustment in the reporting piece. So the percentage of graduates who will qualify for community college, university, military, or industry certification will increase annually by about 4.6% for graduating class of 2022. Now, in the original writing goal,
for the class of 2022.
right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
So 5 years from now.
Each year until
Each year,
then,
but that's what I'm going to.
okay, go ahead.
But that's what I'm going to explain. All right, so originally it was stated 62% to 85% for graduating class of 2022. So, but what happens is because of the changes in the graduation requirements and the changes in the accountability measurements or calculations, we have to kind of compare apples to apples. So for example, the original numbers that were taken into consideration to come up with the goal are no longer the apple. It's now an orange. Does that make sense? So we're no longer playing baseball, now we're playing football. Did you get that, Coach?
Yeah.
Get an audible. Gotta call an audible. So basically what happens is that, and it's the way we disaggregate data on the EOC tests, for those of you that are more familiar with the EOCs. So how TEA scored the EOCs 5 years ago is different than the way it's scored now. And so it's the same thing as far as graduation requirements are concerned. You know, how they calculate graduation rates and what goes into that calculation is going to be different next year. So now, when they're calculating specific things, CSI, SAT, things like that, now they went from, like, for example, CTE. CTE before the calculation was as long as the students enrolled in a CTE class would be counted, right? Now the requirement, the expectation is the CTE has to complete the course, and the course has to be in alignment with, you know, an industry certificate and one of the endorsements. And so there's a lot more parameters that we have to fall into in order for a student to count. Okay, so what I tell you today is going to be a different calculation tomorrow. So what I have to do is, so if I'm being held accountable for ABC today, and next year they add D, well, I'm going to have to take D out to compare A, B, and C. Does that make sense? Okay, and so every year, so therefore every year, the reason we went to a 4.6 growth every year, because they added D, my number may look lower or potentially not have moved because they added an additional element that manipulated the numbers.
That you didn't have the year
Right, that I didn't have the year before. So I've got to take that number out and show you, okay, this is the growth we had. And so it's the same thing I do in EOCs. We look at first-time test takers because when you include all testers, the retesters are a different set of kids. And so we have to look, you know, apples to apples so that way we get a true picture of what that growth really looked like and what instruction looks like. Same thing when we talk about graduation rates and accountability.
So in other words, Dr. Hernandez, the standards that keep changing.
Yes, and so that's why we went to a 4.6 per year, simply because our target is to grow. So to not make it too confusing, what we calculate for 2017 is going to be different for 2018. So now when we're in 2018, this is the new standard. So when we go to 2019, we're going to compare 18-19, but I can't compare 19 to 17 because it was a different standard. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so we just have to continuously evolve with that. So that's why we had to word it the way that we worded it.
Can I add one thing to that?
So, and just to add one quick thing, this was a lot of thought on their part to figure out how to basically keep the original intent of the goal, which was 23% over 5 years, but to not have a baseline. Because that's what's happening is that the baseline continues shifting.
Well, I got to push back on that because there has to be a baseline. Because comparatively, you can't compare, even though the standards keep changing, which is understood because they always keep changing, but we have to have a baseline to compare how do we do from 1 year to the next year, and then we have to have an end in mind to determine just to grade ourselves for that period of time.
So that's what I explained with the ABC.
So know that
So that way we see that.
But
Right,
in
so-
most our governance, it has to be written in the goal. And so
So
under
starting
Congress
from-
measures, that's where you determine
where you started.
where you want the growth to be.
So what we have to do is just, and what I'm hearing is that what we have to do is we have to look at the ABC, right? What's the starting? And board, you need to understand then that if they add a D, we're not, the state may add a D, we're not going to add the D, we're just going to keep the ABC.
Because our goals
Do you see what I mean?
not necessarily tie into anything that's reported to the state. We can use things that we measure internally.
Okay. So as long as, because I don't want it to come off, just to push back, that they're not really reporting what it says in paper. Do you see what I mean? They did this and it's really this. They're lying, they're not transparent, and we get all the anonymous letters.
But under that transparency part, we have to be consistent. And so if we have a software that we're using, we have to continually use it to report out. So even though the state changes numbers and reporting systems, internally, we're using this system to report out our goal.
So
And
then,
I guess the only thing, okay, and we can do that, but what I would like for everyone to understand is that I'm gonna come in at a 70% under ABC. They add D, maybe something I can't control, now I'm at 67%, I actually went backwards rather than forward because of the additional color. But if you take out that D, now I'm at 75% versus 70% because now I'm comparing apples to apples, so
So as
that's
long as
why I
you're,
think
right,
about-
as long as you're okay with that, Mr., or the board is okay with that, Mr. O'Connor, because it will, I just don't want it to appear that we're like cooking the numbers or anything because we're taking out the D. And so what I would hear that your feedback is, if you're okay with how this goal is worded, we just need to have whatever ABC is, a start. What's the baseline for ABC?
so just to say, technically, what the baseline could be right now is 73%. We looked at that, we know what that would be.
Okay.
We know already the state is changing for next year, and something they're changing is going to make that number go down considerably. So if we put 73%, that was our struggle, because we know the formula for Lone Star governance is you put a baseline in. So if we did it the way that it would say increase annually, what would you think? It would say increase from the baseline of 73%.
Okay, so initially,
But next year, that number for sure will go down. It's not gonna
no, I understand,
Yeah.
but initially, okay. So we set a goal,
Right.
goal 1. So what is recommended for change under Lone Star governance is the progress measures, not necessarily the goal.
But
Does that make sense?
Right, but what we're presenting to you is because of how it changes every year, this is what we're presenting to you, so it's not an apples to oranges to cherries to bananas, and you're never really knowing, are we improving in post-secondary readiness? Do you see what I'm saying? We're not, so,
If you want to keep that baseline, and that's going to be the goal that you set the baseline for from now, then we would have to keep that same measure no matter what the state does.
Yes.
correct.
And go back to that baseline every
I'm okay with
time.
that.
If you're
as a
okay
board
with
member.
that, okay.
Because
So then we
from
would
what I
have to-
understand, let me give you kind of some framework as some backstory as to why this goal was set. So from what I understand, that South San in the past didn't really have, we didn't even measure this. So we did have individuals go to college, we did have some go to military, and we did have some industry certification, but it wasn't something that we tracked, measured, and see where our progress has been. And so, as what I'm hearing is now it's part of the state standard,
Right, but it, yes,
and it's evolving.
it keeps changing, yes,
Okay, and so when we set this, there wasn't a state standard.
right.
It was just being reported, but it wasn't being tracked and measured at the state level.
Right.
And so, for me, I know that's a component for y'all to measure, but since we set a baseline, what can change are the progress measures, because on the Lone Star governance, progress measures is reported to us and designed by staff, administration. At the goal level, we just said something very vague, and y'all design how to attain it. I mean, not
So,
necessarily vague,
but, okay, so but am I correct in saying that, didn't we blow out, we already exceeded the 85%?
No, just the.
If you put all of them
just the
together,
GP.
wait a minute, if you put all of them together,
Yeah.
I thought
Just
that,
the GP on the 10% industry.
okay.
Increase, that
So
was.
can the goal be written as something with the 60, with that new 60-30 initiative? And then the progress measure could be all these things that are referred to.
Right, so we looked at all that, what's going to happen is over time, so we're trying to look forward. We already know that that baseline is not going, the way that you would set a baseline next year is not the way you would set a baseline this year, because the goal is going to change in terms of the way it's reported. So if you want to keep a baseline and keep that goal, here's what's going to happen, so just to be clear. Next year, when it gets reported out, and you look at the state data is going to say something different and probably lower than what we're going to report out.
Right.
For what the district's going to report to you, because they're going to be using the same criteria as the one that you set the baseline for. So I would write it into the goal that it's, the baseline of whatever.
Of whatever.
73%. We would say based on criteria established in 2017. And then from then on,
Yes.
you're
We
using the
keep it that
baseline
way.
based on that criteria. Otherwise,
I'm good with that.
Okay, because you're gonna have to be transparent, otherwise you're reporting something
Yes.
else, and then if you look on
And this is,
CPA,
if I'm not,
it's different.
and this is into our superintendent's evaluation.
Yes.
So that has to be fair
Yeah.
too, and we're getting, you know what I mean? So we need to make
Right.
sure, so along with that, we didn't, you know, he's, you know, whoever our next person's gonna be, they're already gonna fail on this one, and it's not their fault.
Yeah.
Like, it's not because, so that's why we're trying to keep it.
It's the vendor's fault.
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be his fault.
That's okay.
So if what I hear you saying is that all we have to do is we need to adjust this goal to reflect using the 2017 standard, that, you know, we start at here and get to here. And if you're okay with that, then we can adjust the goal part to state that.
Okay.
If that's
Yeah, I
okay.
think that's important to put school year 17-18. So
Yeah.
that
And
way
see, now, okay.
future-
So in the Lone Star
Really
governance, where we failed as a board in the progress measures, if you look at our progress measures, this year just ended, 2018. And so in our progress measures, we have to list what we anticipate per year
An
to
annual target.
2022.
Right. An
And
annual
so,
target.
an annual target up into then. And what, I mean, you could do it to where it's evenly each
Right.
year or more or
Right.
less.
Right.
That doesn't matter. But again, just to reiterate, even though the state changes their standard, we're holding our school district to the goal standard we've set.
That's fine. So we'll adjust that goal to the baseline, which was, for,
It was 16,
2016,
17, because it's a
17.
year behind in reporting for
okay,
this.
so we need to change this goal that will adjust it to the 2016-17 standard.
16, 17.
Right, and to increase 4 points by the 2022.
Well, then we could,
No, you gotta add if you want to increase, because your
Then we would
4.6
set
is
the-
annually, so you gotta.
So that would be our annual target, and then we'd have to do whatever it is.
Or that would be your progress measure.
Right. But actually, that would be our annual target. The progress measure could also, so the progress measure is also what we would report out to show that we're accomplishing the pieces of that goal. Okay. So we can adjust that. That's-
So goal 1 is going to be based upon what Tabor showed as college-ready graduates, which did not include at this time military or industry certification, so it has to be written the way I have in the Tabor goals.
Yes.
so is that the 43?
No, that's just coming one, the 73 is what we're looking
It's
at.
73.
But it didn't include military or industry certification.
So does the 43?
But we can't take that, we gotta take that out and just do, we gotta take that out.
What was in the law?
Well, or,
Right. Okay. So can we look at the progress, the recommended growth progress measures then?
So the first one stays the same. We didn't touch the first one, that's as reported by in the taper. Second one is also as reported in the taper through the indicators that the state has implemented. So we went from the generalization of enrollment dual credit courses will increase by 10% to completion of at least 3 credit hours in ELA or math, or at least 9 credit hours in any subject for dual credit, will increase by 10% in 2018.
That line store A through F and
Right, so along with they grew up.
and it went from enrollment to completion, so, yes.
Right. And then on 1.3, we took that one out because it is a direct reflection of the actual goal itself. So it was just a restatement of the goal in a different manner. And moved down the industry certifications to increase by 10% in 2018. And again, to align to the SSAIST school performance framework. Again, going back to the explanation I said earlier, the state only recognizes certain industry certifications. So therefore, anything that we give a student outside, or anything a student earns outside of that reporting, doesn't get counted by the state. And for us, that's not our goal. Our goal is to do everything we can for our students. So for example, if I have a student that is certified in forklift operation, that's not recognized by the state, but that student can take that certification to get hired on anywhere and operate a forklift. So there's different things that we do at the high school level that isn't recognized by the state yet. Now, whether that actually happens or not, at some point, we don't know. But we do offer things outside of what the state recognizes in the reporting. So that's why the reporting piece is a little different because of those parameters that they set.
1.3 is like what you were talking about, your gold standard for the district that you're keeping in place, even though the state doesn't recognize that. That's your.
So on another side note, for every progress measure, we have to have annual targets as well.
But I thought, right, So do you want, okay, so here's a question. Do you want to put like the graduation rate by 2022 and then annual target under there, or?
We have annual targets in there.
I mean, is it like
10% for 1.1 or 10% for 1.2.
10% and 10% by 2018?
I mean, you can just, you don't have to put by 2018.
We can say annual target, right.
2% annual target.
Or do you want the actual,
So,
do
like,
you want annual
1.1
target increase of 2%?
1.1 doesn't have any annual.
2%.
2% by 2018?
Yeah, it's supposed to be up into 2022, because we are focusing on goal 1.
But these are.
So
progress
increase-
measures show-
Progress measures are supposed to have annual targets.
Okay, so we say increase by 2% each year till 2022.
I'm sorry, increase by what?
Well,
2%?
wait, like we can't, yeah, that's not gonna work. We won't increase by 2% graduation every year, so we have to come back and adjust. We'll just have to adjust what we're gonna do for each year.
No.
You know, it needs to be like
Well, as it goes
5%.
up, it's, well, problem with that is for graduation rate, as it gets closer to 100, it's gonna.
It bottoms out, it won't
Yeah.
go past 100.
Yeah, but you want to go 2% from 88 to 90. because you could do
In
that.
1 year, yes, but like, I don't know if we can expect that every year. Because what happens-
92,
Nobody, I don't think
98.
anybody in the state is at 100%.
But if you average it at 1% in 5 years, that's 5%. That's.
So we'd have to adjust it
What
to
is your
1%.
Do 1%, yeah.
Or do you want to
We'd
be in
have-
2023?
Well, that's not, and that's, I guess that's my confusion because
See, okay, so if you go back to goal 1, and you're looking at graduates, we're looking at military, and we're looking at industry certification. So we have a baseline, which we did, it said we were at 62%, and we wanted it to increase to 85% for all of that, okay? For the 2022. And so as progress measures, you know, we said we can increase by 2% for the graduation rate, that's fine. But how does that component overall get us closer to our end goal for goal 1?
Because anytime you're graduating, kids are going through, they have the opportunity.
No, I
to
understand that,
sequence.
but we have to section it out per year.
Right.
Because our goals technically can only be changed, we set 3 goals, and I think in a 5-year period, we're only allowed to change them once or twice.
The goals, right.
the progress.
The progress
But
measures.
the progress measures can change, yes, but they also have to have annual targets though.
So
Right.
so that's what's here, so.
But annual targets to help you with the end goal in mind. So currently, the way it's set up, we don't have annual targets, we have 1 year.
Right, well, even in our original, we don't have annual targets.
Yeah.
Like even in the original, we don't
Well,
have the annual targets.
technically, I mean,
Right.
those are annual targets. It's for
But those are
this
annual
year,
targets.
and
We
you
just
can
have to
reset your
rewrite it,
annual
we just have to
targets.
reset it where it says,
Right, because if you, yeah, because you do have to have annual targets, but every year, your baseline for that annual target is gonna change. You keep your baseline for the whole goal for those 5 years that you set at the beginning, but what if you only go at 1%? Then your annual target next year has to be different than it was this
the
year.
previous year.
Yeah, so you set your annual targets, you can set your annual targets, you can change those over time, and I think your first one, to me, it makes a lot of sense, it's graduation rate. So it's not, incrementally, it doesn't make sense to set the same annual target every year for graduation rate, because of actually, as you approximate 100%, it's not gonna be as
Yeah,
much.
you're not gonna increase by.
That's a dumb question. The goal, the percentage of graduates who have qualified for community college, university, military, industry will increase. Doesn't every graduate qualify for community college? Every
No.
single one?
Not if they meet the TSI requirements.
Nope.
I'm sorry?
They have to meet TSI requirements.
Okay, so the qualification is TSI.
For that one.
TSI, SAT.
But that's what we're
For
changing
that,
on
for
the
that
board.
part, TSI. But I'm wondering why we don't say that.
But didn't we just say we were going to change it to read, the way it should read if it's going with the paper glossary is instead of the way it's there, is for that year that we had the baseline, it should read the number of annual graduates who demonstrate preparedness for post-secondary success in one of these 3 ways, which at that time was the TSI criteria, earning credit in dual credit, or enrolling in a coherent sequence. That's what it needs to read now. It does, no longer, we need to kind of almost come back to this,
The
update.
way it's looked, that language is very, very broad,
Yes.
I think.
Well, and the board was really wanting to have the military in there and those other pieces.
No, that, all
That's
that
not-
is good.
It's just that's not measured by the state.
Yeah.
That's the problem is, if we want to use the state baseline, we're going to have to change the goal to match the state criteria. And if we match the state criteria, then that would make sense that you could work from that baseline and keep that same criteria every year, to your point, too. Because you're making the same point. That actually doesn't match the state criteria right now.
Is
So
that
is that
all
what we did that
part
for?
of that accountability?
What, the military? It is now, but when this
When we
was
did
written,
this, it wasn't.
it wasn't part of it.
They're almost changing this year to year. That's the
They have
struggle
been.
with this.
The last, like, for, the TSI now, that was in it already, but the dual credit card was just, you get to,
If you
if
are
you pass
enrolled.
two different dual credit classes. Now it's specifically 3 hours in ELA or 3 hours in math, or 9 in anything. And so they just.
That's why we changed 1.2 to reflect, so we
And this will be
had
the
So it's not
first.
just enrolling right now completely.
before it used to, right, they changed that.
Yeah.
And it's not just completing any dual credit or AP, it's certain.
And
that
even
they
for the
identify
industry
certain-
certification, I think there are 16 strands, but only 10 of them right now are reflected in the accountability system. So if you have students finishing in those other 6 industry certifications, the state's not
They
looking
don't
at
count
those
that.
right now.
So here's the decision of the board.
So here's the state doesn't count it, but this district
But
counts.
our local, yeah.
That's a decision the board's going to have to make. Are we going to use the criteria that the state sets, and then we would have a baseline that sticks with that criteria, and if so, which year? And then we would have to put that in the goal. Or are we going to do something different? And if that's the case, then we have to calculate our own baseline another way. So this, what you have now is not the state criteria. What you have written in the goals on the state criteria. So do you want to match the state criteria for last year and make that your baseline and go forward? Or do you want to, or do you want to set something different? That's
Okay,
that's
so-
really the board.
So I'm in agreement with leaving the goal as it is.
Yeah.
Your progress measures can change in relationship to pulling out one of those and working with the state standard. The progress measure. So,
Okay, so
We
let's stick with the
have an
goal
issue with
first.
the goal,
Yeah.
with the 62%, we had an issue where that 62%
We're not, right.
even came from because we weren't doing.
and see, I didn't come up with that number.
I didn't-
Y'all did.
Right, and because we never tracked it. So now, let me tell you where that number came up with, because we never tracked it, it wasn't on a taper, it wasn't anything, it was sweet Angelica Melendez counted just based on the people, the students that said what they're doing, because that's all we could do. So that's how we got 62%.
Because the conversation that we had, now that we're talking about it, when we sat at the table to talk, and the question I asked is, do you want us to track kids? Because that's something that hasn't been done. And the only way we track kids is if we just sit there and count. And so at that point, the state wasn't giving us any information on that. We were just in-house counting everything,
Correct.
saying, hey, out of the 500 kids that graduated, 300 of them are doing this, 50 of them are doing this, 20 of them are doing that. So we can do that. The problem that we come across in that is that it's not reflective of what the state reports. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. So we can do in-house counting and give you accurate information as far as what we're
On what
doing
that goal
locally,
was, the original intent.
but
of
it's
the
not
goal.
going to match what you see in the table.
Yeah.
Because the reporting standards are different than what it is we would see in actuality. So they're not going to, that taper unfortunately does not project the actual success our kids are having and what it is they're truly accomplishing, because there's things that we're doing outside of those parameters the state sets, or things that they're not recognizing yet. So if we want to do this and give an actual picture of what's going on, then we would use local counting. We wouldn't use the tapers, because the taper is going to reflect a little bit differently than what it is that's actually happening. So like, for example, if I have 300 kids that achieve some sort of certification, in actuality, the state's only going to recognize 150 of them. So what about my other 150 kiddos that accomplish this?
And therefore, that shows that they're accomplishing the intent of this goal, but the state doesn't.
So for me, and the actual goal that you're talking about, if I can do in-house counting, meaning I'm going to count individual students and this is what they've done, I'm going to be able to report to you every year an actual picture. Because I'm not worried about what the state parameter is, we're actually counting what we're doing.
And see, that's the whole point of Loans for Governance, because as I understand it, I'm not in education, but as I understand it, sometimes reporting's in arrears, and so that's already too late for the current year and where we're setting our goals. And so that's why it's kind of fixed. And that's why we have to remember as to where we got our initial baseline from, because that's where we show progress and what we're using to measure ourselves. Even though state may change and formulate and things, we have our own goal. And it may be, now we're getting all kinds of reporting from different kinds of entities and what we're reporting out. But if we stay true to what our goals are and what we did at that time and use that system, then that's basically the board's concern.
If we do in-house counting, not like manipulating counting, but in-house where we're taking care of it ourselves, I can give you a true number. Now, if we do the state way, right? Right now, we'll report at 73% because that's what the CCRM and CCMR is doing.
23%.
Right,
70%.
So, but I will tell you, when 18 comes out, you're going to see a double-digit drop.
I'll go down to 40.
Just because of how they're changing the parameters, because now these kids no longer count, now we're adding this in, and so all that's changed. But if we do it in-house, I can sit here and tell you, this many kids have applied to university, these many kids are eligible, these many kids went to military, these many kids went, we can give you that stuff individually every year.
And so what we didn't know, Ms. Ostigan, is we thought that you would want something, like not us counting, but something substantial that's reported by the state. That's what, and so that's why we changed,
Because here's the thing.
so it reflects the new criteria.
So example is it?
Sorry, she's really making a really long time.
So if, just being the devil's advocate here, if we're going with systems of great schools, and we are going to come up with our own criteria for assessing our schools, then why do we need to go with what the state is looking at?
That's a good point.
That's
So
a good
let's
point.
look at what we're actually doing versus.
That's a great point.
Right.
That's a great point, because that really aligns.
But I think
So
that
if that-
the difference there, I'm sorry to interject, but it needs to be clear to the community that what is being reported by the state is not what our district is looking at, because that's not gonna match. Okay, and they're gonna be asking, well, how come the numbers aren't the same? What are y'all hiding? We keep hearing that constantly.
Yes, and that was our debate. This team
That was
was
our
on
debate.
That was their debate.
Yeah, they were like, well, then, and that's why they.
Because we can report this, but then there might be a board member say, well, wait a minute, because Tabor says something.
There will be a board.
Because see, my pushback is because I'm the one that's going to be held accountable for this, and I'm
Yes.
telling you up front, my number's going to drop double digit. We haven't dropped in anything since we've been here, and now I'm going to be forced to report something that's going to show a drop that I can't control because the state changed their parameters.
And if the system works correctly, and if you're reporting to what our goals are, and you're having progress in what you've said you would be doing, I don't see, you may get a few who are not following the systems we have in place attacked, but for the most part, it's going to be linear, and we're going to see progress. And we're going to know that this is the accountability we have as a district. And then, of course, we do have to get reported on how we are state accountability. But you shouldn't see negativity. You should see support.
We would see at least 4 board members that would
Right.
be explaining why we're.
So, but and it'll be our responsibility to go up there and explain and clarify what all this stuff means. In hopes that as the team works together, that y'all also support each other and that, hey, this makes sense, and help clarifying those pieces for us. Because I'll go up there and I'll lay everything out and say, hey, this is what it is. We have nothing to hide, but we want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples and not kind of all over the place. And so if we're being allowed to say, all right, this is how we counted, this was that year, this year, this year, this year. But what about the taper? I said, I understand that, but here's what the taper reports, and this is what it is.
And we're not following that.
This is what's
This is
actually
our
happening.
That's what we
So
said.
we wanted to ensure, my deal is we want to ensure every student is recognized and celebrated for what it is they've accomplished, and to show what our teachers are doing through time. And the state doesn't always reflect that accurately, and only because of the parameters that are set. Because they don't count every single thing like we count every single thing.
I think as long as that is communicated,
Yeah.
and
Very good
the
communication plan.
7 or the 8 of us that are up there understand it, without any doubt, then I think that should be okay, because we set our goals, we are a system of great schools, but in reality, the community will see what Express News puts out there.
Exactly.
You know, and
Case
some
has
board
to say
member
we're
will come up and
a
read what
we're
the Express
a
News
yay,
says,
there's many consistency.
okay? So,
Well, and that, so that, okay, so I guess we might need to table this one.
Well, actually, we can go back to the goal that it was. If
But if that's where the reason, again, the only reason why we did all this change to it is because how the taper and how the state, House Bill 22, ABCD, how it's evaluating us. If you're telling us that you're okay with us keeping the original goal and it be us counting and not what the state says, not what's reported in the Express News, then we can go back and adjust the progress measures.
So like, for
The original goal, we go back.
The original goal, we need to adjust the project.
The progress measure, we adjusted it to reflect the state, right? So are we so concerned that they've taken 3 credit hours in ELA and math, or are we concerned with them actually being enrolled in a new credit class? You see what I'm saying?
Okay, so that determination is based on your committees and how y'all want that to be.
Okay.
Okay, okay. So as a goal, the board has 80% control of that. And 20% is the superintendent. The progress measures, it gets flipped. It's 80% administration, 20% board.
And those are y'all's recommendations for progress measures.
But that was just so we had a place to measure, like we needed, the reason why they changed those progress measures is because to match the state. If we can go back to the original goal and just review the progress measures that we put to update for 2019, you know, we can go back and do that. Our biggest concern was what our original was not matching what the state is measuring. And we didn't want, that's why we thought we had to come back and adjust.
So I'm just testing real quick.
But if y'all are
We can
okay,
move
then
forward. We have agreement on going back to the original goal, which is going to be locally reported. Yes. And described with those specific criteria that matches those criteria that are up there. Okay, perfect. All right, so what I want this team to do is work on the progress measures, because really you're very close to that.
right?
Okay, and so one of the reasons why I advocated for this meeting is, as
Listen up.
our progress measures are written, do not suffice the board's intent to master. So they have to be broken down per year. So,
Has to have an annual target.
yes, and so if your annual target is to be the same each year, then you put that, because that's how we know the progress is incrementing towards our goal.
So like the
we
reading
don't-
and math
we don't
have annual
revisit this every
targets.
year.
We should. The only way we revisit is did we progress and are we inching towards our goal?
So meaning like an annual target could be,
Well, I know, but we.
So basically, so this first year was our baseline. Was our baseline true? And how are we on target for our annual? Because our goal has to be attained in 5 years. Are we attaining it? Did we exceed it? If we exceeded it, then that's when we change the numbers, because we attained the goal. And so now we have to challenge ourselves for the coming years. And so that's where they allow the change.
Right, and the reason I'm asking is because if we're gonna do that, then our wording has to be logical and attainable. And we can't just arbitrarily put in there, we're gonna, like, for example, the graduation rate, to increase the graduation rate 2 percentage points every year, your highest performing schools aren't at 96, 97%.
No.
I understand.
So
And I'm
that's
completely
where.
for that, so that's why I know we just put something down so that we can initiate Lone Star Governance. But I know coming into this year, I know it's like, wait a minute, why did we even say that? Or that's too high, or wait, does it make sense? Because we're pretty high already, and so to increment there, that's just too much. So that's where.
Okay, so we just have to be careful with our wording.
Specifically for 1.1, if you're going to set that as a target and not reset it every year, you're going to have to go down. You're going to have to set it at 1% instead of 2%. But the other ones are easy to change to it. Okay, target, you already got that.
okay, so do y'all have enough direction? Denise? Okay. Okay, all right. Maybe we should just, let's go into goal 2. Yeah, I know we had a different plan, but since I think we need to do this whole group, honestly, so we can hear everybody. So who, goal 2? We're goal 2. All right.
So you just stick with the original?
So here's what I'm going to recommend. I'm actually going to, for everyone else that leave, y'all want to just, they want to do a little pull-out, and maybe we
Yeah,
can.
y'all need to, yeah.
Except for
Denise, yeah, Denise, you go with them.
Yeah, and then y'all can work on that for a minute.
Do y'all need to go?
I need to say just for a little bit though, because I have them.
Yeah.
She's our best.
Because it'd be great if we get that agreement for today.
Okay, so we have goal 2. So the original goal, as you see in the handout before you, reads the percent of students who perform at the master's grade level for all grades in state mathematics exams will increase from 8 to 40% by 2022. So what we recommended as a team is reducing the master's percentage because we looked at our local Region 20 and our state accountability, and looking at those two entities, they only grow between 2 and 3% annually. And so in order to make it realistic and feasible for our district, we decided to reduce it based on meeting the 2022 at 2022, we want 60% of our students to be at the meets grade level standard in order to earn an A.
You don't seem to be playing anything right now.
So we took that and then we divided by the next 4 years that we have. So looking at the recommended goal, we have the percent of students who perform at the master's grade level standard for all grades in the state mathematics exams will increase from 8 to 20% by 2022. And I already revealed the rationale.
And then why we changed the goal progress measure and the rationale.
Let's stick to the goal.
Okay, go ahead.
Just make sure.
First the goal.
So the goal itself, the language of the goal, everything in the goal stay the same except for the goal
40 goes to
target. Based on their research, they felt like that 20% was.
So reduce 40 to 20.
Right, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Are y'all good with that?
That's reasonable?
Okay, great. So let's go on to so then the progress measures had to be adjusted a little bit because they don't align with that goal.
So then looking at the progress measures individually, we looked at our district data by grade level because we wanted to get to the root cause. Instead of just looking at elementary, middle, and high school, we wanted to look at it grade level by grade level to see where we needed to, have that laser focus. So we ranked, 3rd through 8th to see how they performed.
And meets, they looked at approaches, meets, and masters on all 3.
Correct, yes. We looked at approaches, meets, and masters. And so just looking at the 3rd grade performance for this past year is 25%. Then when you look at 5th grade, that's at 42%. That's not on the sheet, I'm just sharing the data that we looked at. So moving up, so from 3rd grade to 5th grade, they moved from 25 to 42. And then in 6th grade, 14%, and then in 8th grade, 12%. So there are some huge gaps and deficits there. So we felt that when we did the progress measures, if we targeted a specific grade level, then we could see how that would build upon the previous grade levels. So looking at the first one,
y'all pinpointed the particular grade levels. If you grew in those grade levels, you would need the.
So therefore eventually.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, our root cause for that, it didn't happen in 6th grade, it happened in 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Our 6th graders, it happened in 3rd, 4th, or kinder 1, 2, 3, 4.
yes, that's a really good point because when we were looking at that data, so in 3rd grade 25, 4th grade 26, in 5th grade they went to 42, so that it looks like they made some huge gains. So coming into 6th grade, they came in strong, and then in 6th grade you guys lost them. But really, do they have a strong foundation? And so that's why it helps to break it down this way, we feel, and just have a laser focus. So, yes, ma'am.
So I'm in agreement with that. The only thing that's missing from that language is you need a baseline. You said it, but it needs to be written.
Baseline is 8%.
No.
No, that's the
Where are we
increase.
at now? To get to
2.1, you're at the increase. You don't have a baseline for 3rd grade.
So do 8.75 times 4
Okay,
plus 6.
so do we need a-
So we just need to do 8.75 plus from
X,
Minus
whatever
6.
the
Okay.
baseline is.
No, wait, I think you said it was at 25%.
Well,
Yes.
for 2018, it was at 25%.
Okay, so that's what, so that's
just
what you
add
have to
it,
put.
okay.
In 2018, it was 25%,
Okay.
and you're wanting to grow to 60%
Yes.
by 2022.
and then annual target is
8.75 is going to get you there
Yes.
each year?
Yes.
The way reads are.
The way it reads. And so that's how I,
Okay.
okay, not for the original.
No.
No,
We're
just
saying
our rate.
about, yes, no, but I'm saying the percentage too, this percentage now.
Diana.
Where you're saying like the original it says 4 to 5%, but I think that's the way it needs to be worded.
Yeah, so you have to do, what's the baseline for the grade?
Which we have now, okay.
And then you're wanting to do 8.75% yearly.
You can
And are you sure about that? Because what I've been told is that look at your data, and usually you start off small and then you gain momentum closer to the end of the goal. And so if you're wanting to do that, you can, as long as, because again, this is all reflective on our next superintendent. And so I don't know, you want to also look and be in their seat, and do they think we can hit those annual targets evenly?
Yeah, and that's what we did. We did it evenly.
And so challenge yourself, is that too high annually? Are you going to gain momentum towards the end once we have traction? In the beginning, start off small and work yourself more.
Well, there's the annual target, which is part of Lone Star governance, is to have an annual target.
Yeah, but it's consistent. It doesn't have to be consistent.
It could
It's
be
5.75 every year. It could be 3% from here to next year. It could be a
It
little
could be
bit
like
more.
3%, and then 2%, 5%, like it can, yeah.
Well, when you look at trend data, do you figure out the pattern over time?
And see, that's what they're wanting y'all to do.
Yeah, and that's what they did their research on the data, that's what they did, when they went and looked at it. They looked at other grade levels and what was progressing year to year, what the historical.
Did they progress
like.
consistently year to year?
Yeah, they looked at state and region and how they were progressing.
Nobody.
Nobody's gonna do, because you're not gonna be able to.
Because it's different kids. You're comparing different kids to different kids. You know what I mean?
Maybe, so can I quantify that for you guys?
And see, that's my point. If you're using different kids, but yet we're expecting the same result every year.
So then we have to,
That's the way
change
you
the
say
goals.
it.
That's how the state does it.
I know the state does that, but again, where this is local accountability, giving you the flexibility to set your own goal and to attain it over a 5-year period.
So when you're talking about 3% of third graders, so right now there's like 600, I'm looking at Edgewater, there's 698 third graders, so if you're talking about 3%, that's 21 kids. So that seems pretty doable to me, that 21 kids a year spread out over 9 campuses.
To get the meets.
That we could get there.
Okay.
So.
Okay, cool. Okay, so board members, what's the feedback of updating or changing, just having an annual target, the annual target on this one?
Baseline.
On the
Baseline on the GPM,
Okay.
2.1.
Okay, here's 2.2.
Okay, so 2.2, the percent of fifth grade students who perform at meets grade level standard for math will increase yearly by 4.5% to meet the goal of 60% by 2022. So again, there's no baseline, but we can add the baseline. And then we divided it evenly. Oh, the baseline for fifth grade was 42.
That's dirty, though, that's dirty data. It'll be a little close, but just so you know, it's dirty. More or less. Yeah, more or less.
And then as I mentioned, we just divided it evenly to meet that 2022 target.
8th grade is the same process, but
So we did the same thing for 8th grade, and based on 8th grade data, we wanted to increase it by 12% to meet that target.
You just need a baseline.
And then we'll add the baseline.
All right, so do you have enough direction?
Yes.
Is there anything else, board members? Any feedback? Okay, so just want to point out that even though the goal is mastery, we thought we need to look at meets because that's meeting grade level, and that's also how we calculate our that's how SGS calculates high quality seats, is using the meets standard.
So I'm in agreement, because this really narrows down that possibility of inching towards the whole goal.
There you go.
are the rest of the board members?
Are we okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yes.
Sir?
We're good.
Golf clap for goal 2! What, David?
Fine, David.
Always does that. No, David, put it on a post-it. What is it? Always do that. We're all done. I'm sorry, we're all done. All these questions, we're about to do it, and then you have a question. No, it's okay. What's your question, Mr. Alwood?
Well, because I'm assuming they got 60% needs, because they wanted to mention you get to an A.
Correct, that's an A. The 60% is an A.
But the 20% is a master is an A. So that was the dream.
But that's a district-wide, but that's the entire district. Nobody in the state is.
But nobody in the state.
No, I don't want 40%, I was thinking more like 25%, gives you closer to that mitigation. Rather than that 20%. That was one of the comments.
I was kind of gonna say that too, but.
We can change it to 21. We can make it 21. Yeah, we can make it 20%. That's not a big deal.
Just to go along with
Like
it.
the water.
Okay.
We need to go to 8, 30, 25 minutes.
Because that's what they have it where,
Too low state.
no, I mean, like Alamo Heights, that's 28% of that.
So change it from 20 to 25?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just going down.
But I think it's attainable the way of leaving it at the 20.
I know it's attainable at the, I think we can, I really, even though the state's at 19, I think Region 20 is at, at 18?
Yeah, the state was at 23, Region 20 was at 19.
But that was it, Region 20 was at 19, so that's what we thought.
I think that.
But 25 seems to be attainable for 4 years from now.
That's true.
Okay. Okay, let's change it to 25.
That's one, that one and this one is something that I think once the new superintendent is here and you're 2 or 3 years down the road, you're gonna have to look at this again
Yeah.
potentially, because I mean,
This is the evaluation.
yeah, it's his evaluation and also, in a way, we don't have enough history with masters to make a really good projection about it, honestly, so I think it's probably a good thing to revisit.
Wouldn't you need to change your annual to meet the 25?
Yeah, we have to change the annuals right now.
Well, the meets is already, the way they set the annual targets for the meets is already actually
It's at the A.
high, it's at the A, so I think we're okay with that.
But if you move the 5 year to 25, it was previously 20, your annual would be announced.
But the annuals are meets, not masters.
The annual is meets, the
Oh.
meets level,
Yeah.
not the masters.
Yeah,
They had already,
we changed the verbiage.
But I do need to annualize that down.
We got it. Oh, wait, the next one.
well, yeah, for the goal.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were goal 3, which is around reading, that our students will be performing at the master's level, standard for grades and reading exams will increase from 9 to 40% in 2022. That was the original goal. So we also changed it to 20 after we looked at the research of where the state's at, where we're at. So in 2017, the state was at 19%, Region 20 was at 70%, and we were at 10%. And looking at the Dirty data, we're still at 10% at the master's level. And so when we looked at that, that's why the research, that's why we kind of dropped it down to 20 as well. And when you look at the data from 2016 to 2017, they're growing at that master's level at about 2% a year. So we said, okay, we've got 4 years to go, and if we grow about 2%, actually it'd be 8, we'd be at 18, and we raised it above that and said, okay, so let's shoot for 20. Let's go a little beyond. And you can raise it more if that's what you would like. Feedback on that?
I would say, now that I look at your progress measures for you're at 60% just like these guys, so that 60% then naturally you probably will get at 25.
Right. That was the thinking, David. If we move these, it's going to be a domino effect. So, okay, so reading we did a little bit different. We did choose one specific grade. The first goal was the original first goal. We had an elementary goal, a middle school goal, and a high school goal. And so what we changed it to is we did one goal around everybody. Cumulative meets all grades for reading. And so like David said, its meets will be at 60%. So we looked at where we are now.
So this 3.1 progress measure is district-wide?
District-wide.
So we just need a baseline?
We just need a baseline. And then, and that's how we, yes, what was our baseline? 29%. So we took that 29%, subtracted it from 60, divided it out, so it would be 7.75% annually in order to meet that 60% goal in 2022.
And you're okay increasing annually by 7.75%?
Yes, because when you quantify it, you say, okay, what's 7% of our enrollment, and then you spread that out over all the campuses, then it is I think that makes it a very doable, manageable thing to do. So, and then on 3.2, We did target third grade, and in reading, we're working so hard in early literacy in the district, and the reason we picked a goal for third grade is because our goal is that all kids will be reading on grade level by third grade. And so we feel like if kids are successful in third grade on that first STAR test, then they tend to continue to be successful as they move through.
Once they're on grade level, it's kind of hard to get them off, you know what I mean, as opposed to the other way.
So we were saying, you know, if we could get
We could get
60%
them
of the
on
kids at meets, then that would also, you know, inform that more would be masters.
Right.
And then we would have more kids moving up on grade level. And then the third goal, we feel like that the work we're doing with balanced literacy impacts.
What was your baseline for 3.2?
Oh, baseline was, right now we're currently at 26% meets and 12% masters in third grade, just that one.
Okay, so we just need to add a baseline.
So we just need that baseline. Okay, and then the third goal actually is around what we're doing with our K through 2 students. You might remember that I reported about the Qantas and Pinnell data to the board, and I think that that is huge right now, and what we're trying to do is trying to help our third graders, once they get to third grade, meet those high standards. So we wrote a progress measure, the percent of K through 2 students reading on or above grade level will increase 9.25% annually to meet the goal of 85% by 2022. I picked 85%, or we talked about it, because when you look at your RTI model, 85% of your students should be tier 1. And you should only have 10% in tier 2 and 5% in tier 3. So that's why we decided on 85%. And then right now, our baseline is, I think it's 48%.
One thing I'll say about both of these two is we've done the data analysis, you know, this Amy, the last couple of years with the Learning Framework classrooms versus other classrooms. And we're seeing this kind of data come out of Learning Framework classrooms, so the more it spreads, the more we get implementation, we should see on RTI and on the STAR test, we should see these kind of results.
I have a question. Why did y'all target a grade that is measurable by the state? Like third grade?
Because we feel like it's a threshold. Like if we can get success there, then they will continue to be successful as they move on.
We have too much of it, which we said, I know we shared this before, we have too much of a fix it after third grade. They need to fix it before third grade and then show so this 3.3 will lead to the increase of meets in third grade, which will.
I like the 3.3. It's just, that was just my concern, you know, that there wasn't more of that.
Well, one thing I'll say about the third grade, the reason there's a test at third grade required by the state and the nation is because of all the research, not because of the third grade test. The test was implemented in third grade because of all the research that shows that kids not on grade level reading by third grade, they have a 75% chance of ending up in prison. So it's all that research that made the third grade the focus. So it's not so much that that's the first tested year, it's that that's where the research says you've got to get them there by.
So are you saying not to use the
But the
STAR?
thing is, because it's fixed, and the time frame that we can use to progress and change. So, as a board, what is it that we're going to monitor? You're using exams currently to gauge how they're going to perform on the STAR.
Right, I-Station?
I-Station.
I-Station beginning, middle,
And
year, and end of
don't
year.
you use those in second grade?
We do, but we also use Qantas and
We use
Pinnell.
Qantas and
And I feel
Pinnell,
like
it's a better
Qantas and
instrument.
Pinnell
It's a better
is a better instrument because it's a face-to-face test, not put the kid on.
Not just on a
their
computer.
phone. And, I mean, it depends on whether the student's having a good or bad day or how, like, hey, I'm into this and I want to do it today. So,
No, it's just my question.
yeah.
As to, we want to get ahead of the game and not be in the rear, to say. Because third grade, I mean, we're leading up to third grade, we're testing them to kind of project how they're going to do for the STAR, but then when STAR comes out, we have scores. And so based on this, we're using those scores. And so I'm just giving y'all another option.
What,
She's
I don't
saying,
understand. What-
she's saying, since
Use
we're
ice
using
station.
Pontus,
Since we're- yeah.
yeah, use a different instrument other than STAR.
On 3.2, you can use ISEP instead of STAR.
We could use iStation.
But what if we go away from ISIP?
What if, right, what if the state doesn't, what if it cut, yeah, no, I mean, well, I just don't know.
But 3.3 addresses what she's asking.
Right, but she's talking about for third grade.
For third grade.
Well, I'm just saying, why use?
Well, honestly, you know what? We're rolling balanced literacy up to third grade. We can use Montes and Benel for
We
third
could.
grade. There you go.
I mean,
Like that. Yeah. So we can do that too, for a different grade level.
again, I guess,
Assessing them early.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
but
They're
that's what we
talking
have
about
3.3.
assessing them.
3.3 is K, this takes
Not
care
even 3.3, my question is, why aren't, that's like the first time that's ever come up, why aren't we doing that?
Being ahead of the curve.
Yes.
I think your point is, why not do it like in second grade? That way
Right.
we have a year to intervene before they take
Before
the
we
third
go
grade.
into-
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just me
But they still
giving
don't
you
know how to
on,
read.
you don't have to stick with
Yeah.
what we have currently in the state. Just saying.
With that was ahead of the game.
So I guess I'm not
Are
understanding.
you,
So what you're saying,
instead of
doing
letting
it,
it take out, like.
take out the third grade and
Right.
put,
It's like a second.
Maybe second
Second
grade.
grade.
Second grade.
No.
Because
Just
instead of
make it
waiting
so-
till
They're
third
still
grade.
reading, they're still
but
learning.
didn't we address it in kinder 1 and 2?
And so there's still phonograms and things that they're learning, there's a lot of word study still in second grade.
Because they're
So
still learning
the
to
premise,
read
yeah,
instead
that-
of.
They're not
Yeah.
learning, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they're
still
still
learning to learn.
They're still learning to read and
But
study.
I feel like we're covering the kinder 1, 2 by having that progress measure at 3.3. And then, you know, our reading progress measure at third grade.
I mean, we can pull the third graders into the K through 2 goal and do K through 3.
I think, I think,
Different goal.
yeah, I think so too. I think we address. Well, I mean, I'll go with whatever.
And because it's, we're gonna use this data also as formative.
Yeah.
It'll allow us to make decisions and immediately have teachers, if we're using Pontus and Fennell in second, it's gonna give teachers that information, what data points they are, what kind of level readers they need. It still gives them, allows us to teach.
So all those grades, they test in September. So in September, they know what reading level a student is at and how far off level they are in September. So then it's almost like that's what guided reading is about. It's about individualized instruction so that each kid is
Right.
growing on their own path.
Because you do,
So
I'm just, okay, well, what I was trying to say is, for instance, you left kinder to second together. You know, on one of the other bullets, instead of targeting just third grade, you could have targeted kindergarten specifically, first grade specifically. Have gains there, because you know you're gonna see gains down the road.
Oh, I see, because they're learning to read. I see what you're
Or
saying.
so maybe the problem is that it's redundant, because if you're including third
Oh, I see.
grade there in 3.2, you're kind of already doing that in 3.3. So whereas if you just include,
Like maybe just
Third
third
grade
grade, and
in
maybe
3.3
3.3 be first grade.
or just K through 3, it's saying the same thing, you're just breaking it out into different grade
Yeah.
levels. So if you just say K through 3, it encompasses both progress measures in one. It's very redundant. I think that's the problem.
So in your, Ms. Olsen, you wanted to know how the students are doing, starting with K every year? Are they progressing from kinder? Are they going to be ready for first? And if they're moving on for first, are they going to be ready for second?
And that's what 3.3 says,
Okay.
and that's what 3.2 says.
Well,
We need to
3.2 is a
include-
different assessment though.
It's a different.
3.2 is STAR and 3.3 is Pontus and
So I love K through 2 together because, I mean, you want every kid, I mean, the purpose is you gotta be reading on grade level to be ready for the next grade level. So I didn't, I mean. I
Right,
think
but in
that-
neither of
that-
those are you saying what instrument you're using. So you don't necessarily have to separate them because in 3.2 you're not saying STAR and in 3.3 you're not saying Pontus and Fennell.
But 3.2, it is STAR, it's the same needs
It's
grade
meets
level.
grade level.
So that's understood.
One is about reading on grade level, one is about meets grade level. So the one
Yes.
is clearly about STAR and then this one is about whatever instrument we're using, which is Pontus right now.
But if you combine them, it still inherently means the same thing.
The language would have to change. Because it meets grade level and, yeah, it's not the same.
Because the meets grade level, yeah, because what
But
K
But
through
if
2
a
doesn't
third-
directly.
If a third
impact
grade
them.
student meets grade level on STAR, doesn't that mean that they can read on grade level?
Not necessarily.
It should,
but I wouldn't necessarily.
I mean, if that
Do
was.
we actually have disagreement about it, or are we just discussing, I'm just checking? Do we need to discuss? Okay. Okay. Just because I just want to make sure we get it all.
What was the baseline of 3.2?
Baseline is 26% meets currently. That's the 2018 data.
And an 8.5% annual increase will get you to 60% in 4 years? I don't think so.
Yeah, that was like, make sure our math is correct.
You did that, Bertie. The reason I'm asking you is that many times we confuse percentage increase to percentage point increase. So I don't know what we use in doing the calculations.
It's a percentage.
Because, for example,
I think it's percentage.
It's percentage.
Percentage gain, not percentage. So they're saying they're gonna gain 8.5% every year.
Right.
I think that's what they're trying to say.
Okay,
But that doesn't add up, right?
It doesn't add up.
That's 40% just.
That's
I think what you did, you're adding the 8.5% percentage points.
Yes.
Adding that to the 26 percentage points,
Right.
which gives you 30-something percent. But that wouldn't be correct.
Right. So if we gotta get to 60, we need to change to 8.5. Okay, that's all right.
But the 8.5 is what you said is attainable.
We're going from,
Well,
well, the goal is to be at 60.
The goal is to be
Well,
at
it's
60.
34 divided by 4
Reading 30
is 8.5.
That's between 26.
Because they're at 26 right now. They're at
It's
26.
34. They have to go 34%, yeah, they're at 26 right now.
34 divided
Have to grow
by
34%.
Okay, so then that would be an 8.5% percentage points. Percentage point, not percent. That's two different things.
Yeah, they got, that's right, 8.5.
Percentage points. Because if you
Percentage
do,
points.
Yeah, we just
the
need
way
to.
you have it is you take 26 times 30%.
Right, no.
But you have a big 8%.
And then reading will increase 8.5% after
Percentage
8.5
points
percentage points. 8.5 percentage points.
from 26, 26, whatever it is. Okay.
I think everybody.
Everything's
It's all based on percentage. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else on this goal? Board members, feedback on 2 points? Okay? Because we got constraints coming. All right. Okay. So do y'all have enough direction on what we need to do?
Let's clap for them.
Okay, who has constraint?
We're coming.
Number 1?
We do.
Who has constraint number 1? So something, as they come up, board members, something that we saw as a group, that some of our constraint progress measures wasn't, constraints have to, like, one constraint we saw that was used at System of Great Schools was Midland ISD has, their constraint has to lead to attaining goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, okay? So one of their constraints in Midland is the superintendent will not allow any campus to opt out of professional learning communities. They, Midland, identified that professional learning communities is where this is where they need to gather data. We do this too, but they put that in there knowing that if all schools do that, they will attain the academic reward goals. So with that, and so some of the things we saw with our constraints is the constraint progress measures didn't connect directly to the constraint. So we made some adjustments, okay? So there you go. Go.
Okay, so the original constraint was the superintendent will not allow the absence rate to increase or remain the same. We didn't change the constraint. What we did change was the constraint progress measures. So the constraint progress measure was student absence rate will not exceed 6% in 2017-2018. And then 1.2 was the teacher absence rate will not exceed 6% in 2017-2018. And we are recommending to change the constraint progress measure 1.1 to break it out by grade level so that the student attendance rate at the elementary level will be 96%, the student attendance rate at the middle school level will be at least 94%, and at the high school will be at least 91%. And when we take those and break it out by campus roughly, so we can slice and dice the numbers a bunch of different ways, but we just did by campus. So we have 9 elementary campuses, 3 middle school campuses, 1 high school campus. If you take 96% at 9 elementaries, 94% of the 3 middles, and then 90% of the high school, the attendance rate then comes out to a little bit over 97. Is that right? 97%? Figure it out.
No, 95.
95%, sorry. 95%, that's right. It was still, it's an increase over what it was. The attendance rate / absence rate is an increase over what it was last year, increased.
95.07.
It was 95%.
95%. And then,
Hold on.
yes.
So the constraint does have a target, a baseline, target, and deadline.
The constraints stay the same.
Yeah, so we have to work on the constraint.
The constraint,
Must have a baseline, target, and
Change it. We didn't change the constraint.
So it has to have
it has to have a baseline, target.
So our original constraint was incorrect.
Oh,
Is what she's saying.
Yes.
okay.
It was lacking those things.
Oh,
So all we need,
Okay, let's
so,
do it together.
but y'all based it on a baseline and everything to get the 96, 94,
you have those
97%.
right.
And
So all you have to do is just put that into the constraint itself.
The timeline, what was it again, Trustee?
Baseline.
A baseline, target, and deadline,
Which is the deadline for all of these.
Use 16, I would use 16,
And-
17.
and the progress measures as well.
well, we have 15, 16, remember, where we, attendance will always be.
So,
That's right, 15, 16.
okay. So then we just need to add,
All y'all need is the baseline, and what should it be by 2022?
Okay.
And for the progress measures as well.
So if we
So
want
we just
at
need to
least
add
96% by 2022, you just have to add the date, and where are we right now? So elementary is where? Right, like elementary attendance rate is, let's just say at 94%.
From 94 to 96.
Right, now by 2022.
I did, but I didn't write them by, I wrote it by middle schools and.
It's
high
just,
schools.
all you have to do is write the baseline, you want it at 96% by 2022, you want it at 94% by 2022.
We'll make sure all the wording is according to the.
Yeah, so all we have to do is a baseline, and then the constraint itself needs a baseline, a target, and a deadline.
Yeah, I did good with the concept.
and we removed 1.2 completely, which is the teacher attendance rate. We're gonna come back and add a different, like a policy to help strengthen that one. And then we felt like that one of the other,
About high-quality staff,
mhm.
so that's the next constraint, or not the next one? Yes, it's the next constraint.
Before y'all go on, are we still on 1.1?
Yes,
Before we go on?
go ahead.
What is the average attendance at the high school?
Last year it was just over 90%.
Yes.
Is that typical of all high schools?
Is it typical as in as lower
High
than the
poverty.
ARPA rates, or is it typical?
High poverty high schools?
That's typical.
The data, the data when we were looking it up was 15, 16 data. We couldn't get like live data, so the 90% was our true data for this school year. So it's kind of hard to.
Attendance data is like the graduation rate, it's 2
It's
years
in
out.
years.
It's actually 2 years out.
But her question was, is that typical of other high schools? And JC, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that's pretty close.
Yes.
It might be.
We looked at some of it, we looked at, yeah.
Right.
We looked at districts.
I don't know, I just thought 91 was kind of low, but then that's me. I thought maybe
Generally,
93 might be a little bit more.
Generally, your elementaries
High
carry your
Carry the-
attendance.
Yes, they
I
do.
think that's where we're probably low compared to other districts on our elementaries.
Ms. Flores, I did look at some districts around us for 15, 16 for district data, and I can give you some numbers of what
Yes.
the district is. So like South Side is 94 for the district, Southwest 94, Edgewood 93, Carlindale 94. So yes, so it has to be around 90 for them to get those types.
They're
of
high
loans.
schools.
For high schools,
Okay.
yeah, to get those
Okay.
types of
Okay.
loans.
But as far as this goes, just as long as we have a deadline, a baseline, and we already have the target, but by 2022.
The deadline, it says, no more than 5 years away,
Okay.
1 to 3 year deadlines are recommended.
Okay.
Is that enough direction?
Do it now?
All right. Okay, thank you. That was easy. Constraint number 2.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I'm
Yes.
sorry, because I'm making suggestions in here, I just want to make sure I'm capturing that correctly. When you guys said 1.2, you're removing that because you're implementing a policy?
Yes.
Does that mean you guys are actually writing something, or the district
Yes.
as a whole is implementing a
We have a
policy?
district policy going
Okay.
before the board to address teacher attendance.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Otherwise, we're making it
So we
All right,
have,
constraint 2.
Okay, so back on constraint 1, so on the goal, are we just monitoring?
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry.
Oh, she had one more question.
I'm sorry, it's about that one. So you guys don't
Okay.
want a goal that's going to address that district policy? Right, I just want to clarify.
No.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
All right.
And my question is, are we tracking teacher attendance?
Yes.
So it is going to be a progress measure?
But, well, wait, okay, so this is what we had to decide. The teacher attendance, we felt like came under the, where's constraint? 2, about not allowing any campuses to have inadequate or ineffective staff.
Okay, so
I know.
constraint 1 is just on
Student attendance.
So then we need to word it like that because it doesn't say that.
Okay, so we need to add
So it
student
just says the
attendance.
superintendent will now allow absent grades.
Okay,
So
so we need to get a student
then
absent
we
rate.
have a baseline to target.
Okay, I added that in there. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I had it all.
Yeah, go over, yeah, go, yeah. Scott, y'all go workshop, okay?
all right, so constraint number 2. We did have considerable changes to this constraint, where this one had, the superintendent will not allow any campuses to have inequitable access to effective staff. We did make a recommendation that it will read, the superintendent will not allow any campuses to have inequitable access to proficient staff, nor limit the autonomy to implement site-based staffing.
So the reason we had to define effective, and so teachers who are proficient, they are rated as proficient, you know what I mean, to define what effective was.
It's off the T-test.
Off of T-test, T-test, and even our instrument.
Effective, proficient teachers at the Rockstock.
So a clarifying question, because I'll have the same question for ours. How do we add a baseline and,
Okay, so we're gonna have to look at what our, because we don't have, I mean, they didn't have that, but we're gonna have to look at what's our baseline, how many teachers are rated proficient now? Okay?
And
What-
principals.
Right, and principals. What's our goal to hit?
okay.
So go ahead.
Yeah, we're missing the same thing that constraint
Yeah,
1
yeah,
is
yeah.
missing as far as the baseline and the goals. and
Yeah.
the annual.
What they wanna get by 2022.
We're gonna have to go back. So the first constraint that was originally there, counselors will increase their time directly interacting with students by 20% in 17-18. So this one, we're recommending to remove that. When we look at the constraint overall, as far as how it correlated to the inequitable access to proficient staff, we didn't really see the correlation between the two. So what we did is we replaced that one with district administration will develop a clear and defined improvement plan detailing explicit support measures for campuses scoring in the lowest 10% in the SGS school performance framework.
So that directly ties to systems of great schools. And therefore all campuses are aware of, okay, I'm in the lowest, there's going to be a specific improvement plan for me as a principal.
It related to the previous 2.3 because there was something about an improvement plan for
Right.
staff.
Mhm.
But
It was 2.3 was administration will develop a clear and defined improvement plan, detailed explicit support measures.
So what would be a baseline target and a deadline?
We'd have to wait for ours, we'd have to get our school performance framework and run the numbers. And so we already have the framework. We're working with Engage to provide us a data person, but we'd have to run the numbers to see who's in the low, you know what I mean?
to know how many
are in
you
the lowest
have,
10%.
you don't know right now.
Right.
So you would, over time, once you have the data, you'll be able to set a baseline and say, you know, let's say you have
10% maybe too many
10%,
schools.
yeah, you don't
We
know.
may want to just, it's the 5% level, you know what I mean, the lowest 5%.
Right.
Ms. Olstein, I just, in 2.1, I know there was a certain board member that had, that was very adamant about this constraint. So will, do you think that board member will?
He isn't here.
He's not here to talk.
But,
They
okay.
all knew what it was about.
Okay, so here's a question though. Are the progress measures ours?
Yes.
So
Yes.
even though, but I still feel like we're not gonna allow like counselors to slack or anything like that. I mean, so, I mean, just. Right, we're still monitoring, we're still, I mean, Lorraine is meeting, that we're still monitoring. So that was something that we as a group kept saying too, is just because something comes off here doesn't mean you can't give a directive to the superintendent, or the board can't give a directive to the superintendent. You still have to, you know what I mean, say this is this, but we were just trying to keep it all towards the 3 board goals. So, but we kick it back, if you don't like, like I said, we'll adjust.
The constraint is talking about effective staff, and that progress measure wasn't going to relate to the constraint because it was about percent of time spent. So it's it was very different from the actual constraint itself. It wasn't aligned to that. If they want, I mean, if the goal of the board is to include counselors in the staff, which is time that can be included, but time spent doesn't relate to effective.
Right.
I mean, it's not the same.
No, the one that they came up with is more relevant.
I'd agree.
It aligns more with
Okay.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, I
No, you're right.
I
That's why
actually
we
brought
need y'all
that
to-
up earlier today.
That's why we need y'all to
Yeah.
push back on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
The next one, originally the 2.2, it talked about decentralized budget, and you notice we actually included that into our
Goal.
constraint.
To the constraint, sorry.
Constraint. We added it to the constraint where it was superintendent will not allow any campuses to have inadequate access to proficient staff, nor limit the autonomy to implement site-based staff. So we included that into
So we
the
put that
constraint.
progress measure into the constraint.
So we created a new one. This is campus administration will develop a clear and defined improvement plan detailing explicit support measures for teachers scoring below proficient in domains 2 and 3, those are the ones that focus on academics, after informal observations. So basically the principal does the walkthrough on the teacher. The teacher scored below proficient in domains 2 and 3, and then at that point it triggers the principal and CNI to provide support. Some of the things that me and Ms. Shields talked about is try to provide mentors for some of these struggling teachers,
Right.
along with instructional coach support.
So we're presenting that, I think tomorrow night, of what our detailed plan is, because that's what we're supposed to present on constraint measure. But when me and Lorraine were working on it, we just thought, and again, take it back, domain 2 and 3 of their T-test evaluation is directly tied to high quality instruction. So what we don't have is how many are proficient in domain 2 and 3, because we haven't yanked, but we can get it through Eduphoria and get a score of we have this many that are proficient here, how, you know what I mean, and set the goal.
So great thing about 2.2 is
We can create a baseline and we can create what we want by 2022. Now, one thing we need to push back on that I want us to be careful with is I don't want this constraint, meaning everybody rates everybody proficient. You know what I mean? Because that's something we've had to overcome where some teachers, when we got a lot of new principals in and everything, oh, this teacher's had Exceed for years and years and years, and they weren't that.
So we talked about that, but we
So-
went to small groups because this progress measure or this constraint will also be holding principals accountable. So because it's at the same time holding principals accountable, hopefully that'll limit.
Because of the first one.
Yes.
Okay, so the first, yeah, okay, that's true. That's true, the 10% SGS, okay, that's true. The first one does hold the campus administration.
2.1, the lowest 10% means out of 9 elementaries, the lowest.
It's based on SGS, remember that we have that.
The SP, whoever, on the SPF,
Yeah.
when we do that, the lowest, the bottom 10%, we thought,
Of schools.
of schools,
So that means 1 elementary.
right.
So what's the lowest 10% of the 3 middle schools?
That'd be 25%, I see what you're saying.
See what I mean? I mean, the lowest middle school is 33%.
Well, but I thought we were putting it all,
Oh, out of all schools?
all schools
That's
at SGS.
Okay.
And so it might be, maybe it's a middle at the bottom, it could be a middle at the bottom, it could be an elementary.
Yeah, it'd be 1 school and a half,
Right,
or at the most 2.
okay, so we like have to adjust the number where it's at least one
That's
school,
fine.
because it's 13.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, did y'all hear that? We need to adjust the number because we have 13 schools, so one school, 1 out of 13, whatever that percentage, you know what I mean? That's fine. Okay.
Under which one is that?
Instead of using percentage, we can use,
2.1.
say the lowest 2 schools.
Lowest 2 schools on SGAs, okay, that sounds
Something
good.
like that.
Lowest 2
Let's
schools.
do that quick, I'm
Yeah.
a little confused. How are you gonna hold them accountable again? The principals, for example?
Well, if, for example, they're rating all of their teachers highly when they don't deserve it or whatever, they're going to be held accountable, one, with the school performance framework, because we're going to be looking at the accountability scores. So we're going to be looking at how the teachers are performing there. And also looking
So
at,
how are you gonna know how they're performing? If you're getting your information from the principal saying they're doing great?
no.
Because we're there.
Oh, you're there.
Well, and we pulled the data.
They have to log in.
They have to, right, and
And put their
we
data.
yank that data from the school, and then we'll run the numbers. So it's not just them telling us, no, it's us. Yeah.
Another thing you can do, and this is what
Great question.
some districts are doing, is they're actually taking the way people are scoring their teachers, and then they're putting it up against performance data,
Mhm.
and
We did that.
seeing if there's a match.
When
and
we
then
first,
being
when
able
we
to
first got here, this is with PDOS. We had everybody exceeds, and we had 2, and this was at our 2 low performing schools. Our 2 IR schools had almost, I mean, everybody was at proficient or higher,
Yeah.
yet they were low performing. So yeah,
Yeah.
we had that talk, where we've aligned it, where, right. Yeah, great question.
And then the last one also was changed to no campus will have more than 10% of instructional staff scoring below proficient on summative evaluation. What was it?
The 2.2 was formative, giving them an opportunity
Because it's
to
walkthroughs.
review, and 2.3 is at the end.
Is the actual summative.
The summative, correct. And I think we chose 10% because what was the discussion we had there? The logic behind.
I thought that was to stay aligned with 2.1 and the 10% of the.
Right, so we
I
can
think all 3 of those are going to have to be adjusted.
Yeah, we're gonna have to adjust the percentage.
And I would say, as we looked at our data, teachers who had to non-renew and coach out, I think it was at 6%, right? Is that?
Maybe, just, is that district-wide? We gotta look at that. So anyway, so this is something, like I said, the idea of these constraints is really to align to that effective staff. And so that's why we thought if we were really targeted on, okay, the SGS, how schools score, okay, you know, teachers being proficient in 2 and 3, but you're right, Balsadua, if they're proficient in 2 and 3, I better see an A. I mean, like, where's the A? You know what I mean? I better see meets, you know, 60% meets.
Or if 90% of your teachers are.
Yeah, 90% of your teachers are proficient, I better see an A for that school.
You also
So-
better be really high on the school performance framework.
Right, and you better be high on the school performance framework, so that. And then we 10%, we don't know how many are below proficient right now, like we don't know how many are developing. So we still need a baseline once we, you know, grab that data from Eduphoria. So this is the same one, needs a baseline with, but eventually we want no more than 10% below proficient by 2022. So if you think that's too high, they're too low, go ahead, Ms. Flores.
So, y'all changed the 2.3. So is it understood then that those that do have 10% or less of instructional staff scoring below proficient, that there is a clear and defined improvement plan for those teachers? Because that's was addressed before then.
Right.
The plan.
Well,
On how to support these teachers that are not meeting.
Which is what's 2.2, campus administration
Now
will
you're at
develop a
2.2.
clear.
Okay, I see.
Yes, ma'am.
I see.
So we put that up there.
Went up there.
Yeah.
Okay.
There, because when they took off the first one,
Yeah,
they moved it.
okay. All right.
It might be less confusing
I
to.
remember we chose 10%, if you think about it, 10% of a school of 20 to 30 teachers, that's 2 to 3 teachers, and that's kind of.
Okay, so that should be good. I mean, that's good, 10%.
Well, the 6% number that Lorraine's saying is about right,
Could also-
that 10% makes.
I would go higher than 10%. or you can go
So my
lower.
question is, at what point does this initiate an improvement plan?
when you have,
in the school year.
Actually at 2.2.
at 2.2, when we said campus will develop a clear, so that right there, will domain 2 and 3,
When are those assessed?
September, October. Like, and we're gonna share that at the board meeting on Wednesday, but by September, I get a list of, hey, who is not hitting it by through walkthroughs. October, and then by November, the plan is executed. So, and then, I forgot I was gonna, he'll come back. But so we just felt like with this constraint, that's really sending a message that we need high quality teachers in every classroom. And we were trying to be as specific as possible, so. We can do that. So
I know in our discussions with Remind Davis that in 2.3, we had talked about that the 10% that every 9 weeks that the walkthroughs would determine who's below proficient, and that group would get a growth plan. So every 9 weeks it would be refreshed on who needs assistance. And so that's what we discussed. It didn't translate for one reason or so.
Yeah, I don't think if that's put in there.
That's on 2.2, right?
No, well,
That's why I was
we
asking
talked about it
at
in
what
2.3, I'm not sure.
right, and what we're sharing Wednesday, it's September. Like by September, I need to see at least, right, and by October 1, they should have an idea of who are your 2 to 3 that are below proficient. So we have deadline that like we're gonna share on Wednesday, but
You can just put after informal, or you have after informal observation walkthroughs at every quarter.
oh, there you go, quarterly.
Quarterly or every 6 weeks or whatever. Quarterly.
And you know what this also helps, I just realized it, Lorraine, where's Lorraine?
Right here.
You know what really helps is this will not allow a campus principal to wait on their walkthroughs. If we say, you know what I mean, if you put quarterly, you know what I mean? Because remember, this principal's no longer here, but she remember, didn't have one walkthrough, and we're like, what the heck? You know what I mean? It was like 2 months. So if we put quarterly, then that also shows to principals, you need to be having walkthroughs on the first day of school.
But also I think it's also good pressure on the principal because once you start, you do the walkthrough, it's not working. By the end of the year, you shouldn't have more than 10% of your teachers still developing. That means.
But I also want to be careful too. I don't want them just scoring everybody proficient either. So we got to balance that with the SGS. I don't want them just, okay, I'm going to go easy and score everybody proficient. Along with this, we're hoping this also, because something that we've noticed with just some of the non-renewals, let's say Lorraine goes in and does a walkthrough, and the principal goes in and does a walkthrough, and it's developing, but the assistant principal goes in, and it's like proficient or, you know what I mean? And so we're hoping that this will get where we need to calibrate, you know, do we understand what high quality instruction is? So, but that's one thing that like, I think Dr. Saavedra, we did pull one because the principal had it, our staff had it, but the assistant principal had proficient. Well, we didn't bring it to y'all for non-renewal because then, you know what I mean? That's not consistent, right? So just add a baseline, all those, okay, target, okay. So, okay, who's next? Constraint 3?
Oh,
wait.
Sorry.
I'm looking at the numbers, and it is actually 4%. So we're thinking that's a lot of
Should be,
support plans.
probably 5.
Should we do 5%?
That's fine.
5 should be 5%.
Okay.
Based on the
2.1
data.
and 2.3 or
On
just?
2.3.
On 2.3.
2.1 because it's based on campuses, like Dr. Saavedra said.
It's gonna
That's only
change.
one.
Right.
It's
So that's
the
going to
lowest
change
two.
too.
Right, below is 2.
2.3 should probably be lower.
Okay.
It should be more like 5%.
So they have, and again, we're not gonna bring this back to like for the board to adopt until like probably August, you know what I mean? So we'll have baseline, I'll probably send a draft to the board members so they can make sure that we're all good.
Because we need concepts today for sure, but like all the
But I just wanna make sure
and the data.
I just wanna make sure our staff has enough direction from y'all to make sure that we know what, you know, how to.
On 2.1, I know we discussed already in that 10%, you ought to just say in the lowest quartile. The lowest quartile will only be 3 schools.
Okay, there you go. Lowest quartile.
You'll be working consistently with the lowest 3 schools.
That's good, that's good.
The lowest quartile on 2.1. Okay, that's great. Okay, constraint 3, we say the best, wait, we need to apply constraint 2. Good job.
Yes,
Good job. Constraint 3.
So something, right, so something that, I don't know if AJ brought this up to you, but I kind of got this at SGS as well, that how does this, the original constraint about closing schools and facilities plan, how is that getting us to our board goals, was the question that I got. And so it's like, great question, I go, do you understand what happened was, we had just closed schools, they wanted community input. So what we tried to do is still get the intent of the choice programs, community input. Again, if you don't like that, like I said, kick it back, but go ahead, also do it.
So we looked at the original constraints and then we looked at the goal. And we noticed that the constraints really didn't help achieve any of the goals at all. So looking at the progress measure, we looked at which of those helped contribute to achieving one of the goals. And the one that did was 3.2, which was, no, it was 3.1.
The 3.1.
Will monitor enrollment and increase academic choice program options to all middle school students by spring 2018. Additionally, part of the original constraint that we saw as a common theme throughout the original was a structured process for gathering and incorporating the community's values and ideas. So our new constraint is the superintendent shall not limit academic choice program options at any level, nor limit the gathering and incorporating of the community's values and ideas. So again, in reviewing the constraints and the ideas, the original intent, we felt that the most important ideas were the community inputs and increasing student options, which again ties back to our SGS. And going back to our goals, it aligns most closely with goal 1, which is increasing percentage of students who qualify for post-secondary and increasing graduation rate.
Go ahead and constrain one. Good.
We don't stop the goal. I mean,
Or a constraint, it's a constraint.
so we know we have to add baseline and timeline, obviously. But
How
then,
would you do that?
Well, that's the, I've seen others that have a constraint similar to this. I'm gonna get some feedback.
that's what I was asking when the previous.
I've seen other, because I've seen like the other ones, the SGS, they have something about community input, they will not, you know what I mean? So look at the constraint, look at our progress measures, tell us what you think. So go ahead, also do it.
So our first progress measure is the superintendent will monitor enrollment at each campus and each choice program. So we wanted to include, there was a progress measure in the original one that talked about monitoring student enrollment. We wanted to include monitoring the enrollment at each choice program. And it also was just talking about monitoring the enrollment at the middle schools. We expanded that to all schools just for better accountability. Progress measure 2, the superintendent will host a minimum of 3 parent engagement meetings a year. Again, back to the theme of the community input. And then progress measure 3, the superintendent will post a call to quality schools when considering a new school choice option and engage the community in the process. Again, back to the original intent of incorporating the community values and tied to systems of great schools and the call for quality schools.
I think you kind of cleaned up some of the language. It might have prevented us from progressing, especially if we're bound to a long-term facilities plan that's no longer relevant to progress of the school.
Well, then that's what we like, how is that gonna get us reading, increase our reading or increase our, but we thought the way we put it here, the intent and the intent behind the constraint was, you know, increasing our enrollment and really getting community feedback. And I think if we put a constraint on our superintendent, that you can measure at least on CPM2, that they have scheduled a minimum of 3 community meetings throughout maybe, you know, a beginning, middle of, you know, or something where they, you know, address the community and get feedback. And that could look different, like it could be like when we have formal, it could be coffee with the superintendent. It could be, you know what I mean, but we thought maybe at least a minimum of 3.
And we didn't make it specific to school choice, we didn't make it specific to.
Because we didn't want it just for academies.
Something that way, it could be a 2-way feedback, it could be whatever it needs to be based on the needs of the district at that time.
My question is in the constraint portion of it, it says nor limit the gathering and incorporating of the community's values and ideas. is there ever a limit to what you can do to that? I'm kind of concerned about, we're never going to limit that ability.
Well, that came from the original language of the original constraint, which was, it said the superintendent will not propose a change of use for a functioning campus unless the board has adopted a long-term facilities plan that is developed by a structured process for gathering and incorporating the community's values and ideas.
So that's the way we use gathering and incorporating. But if we can change the constraint if there's a better word.
Well, I'm just concerned that someone gets a hold of this constraint and they're going to say, I want the superintendent every day to do meetings because you're saying you can't limit that.
That's right.
They get to its full capacity.
Good
Which
one.
you do. You want to now.
That's a good point.
But we don't want to constrain a future superintendent.
That's true.
So,
What's your recommendation?
I mean, I know in theory that's what we're going for, but I mean, I'm not sure what kind of language we can change to say.
So could we just,
We could stop it
at any level, and then hit the community input through the constraint progress
Or
measures?
even if we just add structure, replacing something in one of the limits, that way the structure has some authority and some.
So say what you're
Okay,
saying.
yeah.
So wait, so what are you proposing?
So keep the first part and then something with the nor limits the gathering, provide structured gathering and incorporating.
Oh, at any level, and provide structured
for
gathering
and inputting, yeah.
and for incorporating the community's values and ideas.
Yeah, that's great.
You got it, positive?
Yes.
So,
that structure
options,
is
no, options will not limit options at any level, and, what did I just say?
Provides,
Provide
structure for gathering.
provide
incorporating.
structure for gatherings.
For
For the gathering,
incorporating.
incorporating.
There you go, okay.
Yes.
We, and by the way, just so you know, Diane is typing everything into our.
Oh, you're awesome, Diane. Okay, thank you.
It's on one doc, then you'll use that
Okay.
as recommendation.
Yeah, and I just want to add, probably it's more of a communications issue on 3.3. When we say host a quality schools, I get where we're going with that. But if you have someone, let's say going to Price, a parent, and you say, actually, it's not doing too well, so we're going to call for quality schools to replace or partner with that.
The only way they can call for quality schools is defined by SGS, where if they're at the low, like if we have a constantly, that bottom quartile, that's posted on the website, everything, then that will be a call for quality schools.
So the superintendent literally has to post for that call
Oh.
in order for it to be legitimate.
It can't just be somebody, you're right, it has to go out like for a request for proposals.
Yeah, and I think that if we speak to media or anything about this, there are certain things we should be taking out and highlighting. That should be one, because the community is not, we don't have any experience with this,
No.
and this is brand new.
Yes.
In the 10 company members say too. So we just kind of need to stretch that out, publicly flesh that out and see what that actually means.
How are y'all thinking about putting a target on this? I mean, it's like 100% thing, 100% up from 0%.
I don't know, right. And
100% decline.
because I feel like with our choice programs, I just wanted some of the language from Systems of Great Schools, and so we just thought, I mean, and we want whoever our next superintendent knowing that this isn't, you know, this is their evaluation, this, you know what I mean? So that's why we put the language in there, but you're right, I mean, like.
We can put it at the end, like 100% of the.
We could say that our baseline is we have a choice option at 4 of our campuses, maybe by 2022.
22, we have choice options at all of our campuses? That could be something.
Or 9 of our campuses.
Right, or at 70%, 75% of our campuses.
There you go.
What do you think? Okay.
That's actually, there you go.
I like it.
Yeah. Because you don't have to have that formula in the actual constraint. You have to have it in the formula. So the constraint can be worded like it is.
Okay, so then we can do the CPMs, and we need to have that of a baseline. And monitor enrollment, that's going to be interesting too. Like, what's our baseline? We don't want it to go below 9,000. It's already below 9,000.
Well, yeah, it's going to be all these are interesting because you don't really have a baseline you haven't started it.
Right, right.
But, yeah. What is the monitoring enrollment to, what's the goal of it?
The goal is to increase the enrollment of our district, you know, to keep our kids here.
So maybe we say that, rather than monitor, increase enrollment.
Superintendent will increase enrollment.
maintain or increase enrollment at each
Maintain
campus.
or increase? How do y'all feel about that instead of just monitor? Maintain or increase?
That would have a target.
Yeah, the only
Baseline.
problem with that-
Go
Monitor
ahead.
doesn't.
Well, Mr. McGee?
The only problem with that is that there's some external factors as to enrollments that we don't necessarily have control over. So even maintaining it, by that level, the superintendent would be knocked on that on his evaluation.
I agree.
So those are external factors we can't control here. But part of this is that we get board updates every week with attendance, so, I mean, I think that would continue into this constraint.
Right.
So,
Ms. Osteen?
I agree.
Is there anything like according to like how we're evaluating, how y'all are evaluating yourselves that we need to adjust this? Besides, I know that the base, the target, all that stuff.
No, everything else seems to be in order. Because it is relevant to our theory of action.
I'm just wondering how we're going to put a baseline in there. Like what's the actual measure?
For
I get what you're
which one?
saying, like if you,
Yeah,
for
because-
CPM 1.
Yeah. Because,
So-
I mean, he's
so what-
right.
So
I
what's
just-
what's the end result if we lose 100 students for the next 4 years on this? No, I mean,
yeah, does that trigger like?
what does it do?
There'll be a school closure.
No, I'm saying from the evaluation
From the
of
evaluation
the,
standpoint.
of the,
We do
of
want
this, or the
superintendent
CPM.
council.
Like, does that mean we fire the soup? Does it mean it's just done as evaluation, that it's poor performance? I'm just curious, that,
There, towards the evaluation part on the SUP, there's percentages he has to meet.
on total?
Of the total
So
program.
in here, he would fail this piece or get a very low percent.
He'd still be okay with everything else if he was on target.
Because we still have the charter schools who have another 3 years minimum to continue to enroll. So the reality is, we'll lose some amount of students. Maybe it's not the same, but maybe it's 50, maybe it's 100.
And I think, and that was one of the reasons why the constraint was there, was because if we saw a decline in enrollment, we wanted a plan before a school closure to happen. And so, that, it's a good point, it could be a progress measure instead of just the monitoring. That baseline would be what it is now, and if it goes lower than this within the next 2 to 3 years, then it prompts a quality,
That's a good idea.
quality
Yeah.
for a school closure.
So instead of trying to measure enrollment, since the constraint really deals with offering choice programs, why don't we measure the increase of choice programs in the district moving forward? And you can identify a baseline. You can say, as of now, we have X number of choice programs
There you go.
at the district. And
And what's our target? What do
yeah,
we want?
13, but right, 13 or at least
You know,
a 10.
Because,
So then that forces us to be on target.
right,
To change
Well, I
that.
think-
well, because we believe, I think the Citizen Great Schools philosophy is if you provide great choices, they will come, they will
Come and
stay.
they will stay.
You know, and as Mr. Munguia says, trying to hold the student accountable for, on measurements that are influenced by outside factors that he or she has no control over, wouldn't be quite fair. But what you want to make sure is that the superintendent is promoting new options on a regular basis, you know? I mean,
Yeah, and you're already really monitoring in a way enrollment by attendance.
right.
So we're responding, yeah.
So should we put the first, okay, so
So then would we still monitor enrollment of choice programs?
Or
just,
I think you
I think
can
it's-
do both. You can, you can monitor or measure the increase of choice programs and the number of kids registered in choice programs.
There you go.
So we could just take
we
off
could,
the
we could, okay, but I kind of like like by 2022, at least 75% of our schools will offer
Yeah.
a choice,
Up from,
you know what I mean, up from
Yeah.
2 or 3.
but.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I also like that one
Yeah.
too.
We have a
That's
quick.
Yes, sir.
I've encountered this myself. I hope you don't mind me chiming in, Superintendent.
No.
I've encountered this before, and we have a declining enrollment just district-wide.
what we put a constraint on was the superintendent shall not allow a building to be open if the percentage of students decreases by. You know, thus, because you can't, it's a moving target with grades, right?
Yeah.
And that was tough to put on as a constraint, but it challenged us saying, okay, if we have 3 buildings and all 3 are declined by 25%, we need to look at consolidating those 3 buildings.
But I think we want to look at it before that, before they ever leave. I would rather back it up.
But there's but you can put on the actual progress measure itself. There you could also do obviously sub-progress measures that lead up to that.
Or you can do, if the enrollment drops at a certain level, the superintendent will bring forward a plan, a proposed plan for ratio of student to teacher or student to building. Something that kind of brings the reality that you have.
So like the efficiency? So
So
are y'all, okay, so wait,
hold on,
so
hold on.
I
Hold on,
hear a lot
I
of
think we
things.
almost had agreement on CPM 1, I just want to go back to it real quick, because
Right.
that's a whole different tack. So CPM 1, what I heard from everyone was that we're saying that the superintendent will increase choice programs in the district, and we need to put a target and a baseline, which y'all can do that.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure, do we have agreement on that?
Right.
Because that's, okay,
Okay.
awesome. So that's CPM 1. Now, are we saying that, because that's really what y'all are talking about now is going back to the way the constraint was originally. So am I hearing that you want something about school closures?
Because that really doesn't align to any of the goals.
I mean, like, right.
But financially it does.
How do you create options when you don't have
Or
efficiency?
should that be a board, well, should it go here, or should that be a board constraint on the board? Because ultimately,
That's true.
you know, if the board will not allow a building to go below, I don't know, 50% utilization, something like that? That, like, you know, maybe it needs to be the board will not allow, right, not go below 50% utilization,
Request a
something.
facility for whatever.
Should that be? Now, we didn't touch the board constraints on the board.
Yeah.
No, we didn't touch those. If you want us to, like, we can, but yeah, we didn't touch those.
Maybe we can just park that discussion. to
Yeah.
See how that fits into something else
Correct.
right now.
Yeah, because I think that, I mean,
Yeah.
that would be a very courageous, I mean, really, that's a really courageous constraint.
No, I mean,
But I think that's also,
it's reality.
it is reality, but that you know how we went through it the first time, and you know how.
Increased choice.
Especially if you have it as a board, if you have it in policy or, you know, in this, it's standard. And you can measure as a school, a declining school is getting there. So that, you know, last
Hey,
time we
you
were
better
criticized,
get
you give them
something
the chance
together,
of
right?
enrollment, you know.
You need to get
and
a
you can see it, that
partner with
they're getting to that-
something, you
to
need
that
to get
figure.
your enrollment up.
But before that, there was no consequence to what was going to happen when the decrease until the school closed, and now
That's
it's
true, that's true. You bring
But
up
before we
excellent
identify the number, what we really need to do is identify what is utilization in our existing campuses.
Yeah, true.
So that you don't identify a number where a campus is already below that utilization figure.
So we'll come back with that.
Yeah.
Do y'all want to?
We need to work.
I think we need, and I think that might be a board constraint on the board.
Board constraints.
Yeah, we don't do that, right?
Something new.
Okay,
So we have
y'all have
agreement though on this because we
Yeah.
said CPM 1 is about increasing choices.
Mhm.
We're going to put the language to that. You're good with CPM 2, I didn't hear any.
But what's the growth or the baseline to target?
For what one?
Oh, for 2.
Oh, for two, they'd have to go back and figure that out with those.
So eventually it might be 6 or 9.
Right.
Yes. Start agree.
quarterly.
Maybe it has to increase like 5% every year, I don't know, like increase accessibility, I don't know, to, you know, as we go through the constraint, you know, as we start doing pre-parent engagement meetings, maybe it needs to, you know,
Does it, like, for that one, does it have to increase every year, or can it be 3 years?
No less than? You can, I mean, you can set whatever you all agree to as that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true, because we have a lot of things that can be considered.
oh, yeah, parent
You could
advisory
also-
council, we have a lot of things.
You could also make this one about like the number of people that the
That's
superintendent
what you said.
is seeing versus the.
That's what
number
he
of
was saying, like
students.
the, yeah, like how many people show up,
Attendance, yeah.
the attendance.
Yeah,
Or
You can have 3, but you're having 10 people.
yeah,
You want to
correct,
see
yeah. So that you're reaching more people. You can set it like that.
I just thought maybe adding the word public in there, because I heard the teacher-parent thing you were just talking about. I know if we say, oh, we met our 3 because the parent advisory meant 3.
Yeah.
But that's not a public, that's an
The
open.
larger audience say that's not what
Right.
the intent of this is for, so maybe adding just public to that teacher-parent.
Okay, that's good.
Public before parent? 3 public or, is that what you're saying?
So 3
Well,
public
3 public.
parents, yeah.
Community? Thank you.
Okay.
Did I hear someone say change parent to community? Or
Yes.
parent?
Public.
Yes, right.
Public, community, or do you want to keep just parent?
Public community.
Okay.
Public is good parent.
Anything else? What do we have on 3?
The superintendent will post a call for quality schools when considering a new school choice option and engage the community in the process.
That we good there? Dave? Are we okay there?
So
Oh,
they
I
didn't
know
have
we talked
one
about
before.
it. So we were saying 100% of the time or something, but that's the only thing we don't have on there either is what's the baseline and what's the target and stuff.
And this one's totally new. They didn't have one before, and this is it.
Right.
On CPM 3, can we put a minimum, no less than 2 community engagement?
Okay. When considering a new school choice option and engage the community
At least twice.
at least twice, yeah, at least twice.
Whether that's 2 board meetings or just public or
Yeah,
a
that's
mix, could be.
Are y'all back in success or defeat? Are you coming back in success or?
Is this,
Defining.
Okay.
We actually had a big aha, so.
Oh, yay, okay. Constraint 3, are we good?
Are we okay on, okay, so do y'all have enough direction on constraint 3? Okay. Little dog clap, woo-hoo! Okay, go Lee, go.
It's gonna be a ball.
Water.
Well, 1, are you ready to go back up?
Seems to be the thing. Okay, so. All right, so we rewrote the entire thing.
One goes the other.
Okay, so we went back and we left the goal as is, right? So we didn't.
Wait, which one as is?
Goal 1.
Goal one.
Goal 1.
No, I know, but the original or the?
No, the original.
Okay. Okay.
You're supposed to be on my.
I'm sorry, I didn't know. I think that's a great idea.
That was good. So progress measures. All right, so progress measures, we left, or we went back and looked at the data to make sure we're accurate. So we're starting with the 2017 number, because we're always a
Okay.
year. So 1.1's graduation rate will increase from 86.7, because we're going to use the same, that's the taper. We're going to use the taper for that specific one. So 86.7 is a 91.7. So that's in essence 5% in totality by the time we're fully into.
By 2022?
By 2022.
Which annual
It's all right, 1.2, we did completion of at least, we took all the specificity out that the state has in their jargon and took the 2017 number again, so we'll go completion of at least 3 college credit hours. Completion of at least 3 college credit hours will increase from 64 students to 100 by 2022. 100 students.
Would you repeat that one more time?
But again, completion, not just enrolled, but actually have completed
Say it
dual
again,
credit course.
Dr. Dupont.
Completion of at least 3 college credit, I guess it's college credit hours will increase from 64 to 100 students by 2022.
And this is for English and math?
No, this is just college credit hours, just dual credit. Now, if you want us to get into the specificity, we can, of what the state has out there, but we
No,
don't.
I'm just going by,
So I'm back here on this one. So what we did was we split this one up. So now it's,
so the dual credit course, no.
right, so we did the dual, so rather than enrollment, we did completion of dual credit of at least 3 hours. So what I did was I had my college and career readiness advisor go back and see how many seniors graduated with 3 hours or more. Because the mistake we were making was we were looking at the numbers in totality of the campus, but the goal is specific to graduates. So now we're going back and looking specifically at how many seniors did this. So that gives us a more realistic number.
That's good.
So,
So the
yes,
baseline is 64 and the goal is
students,
100
100,
by 2022?
yes.
Yes.
And you want to know your annual targets?
Why, we can divide that out. You want us to divide that out and give you a
I need
number?
an annual target.
Okay, so we can do that. Yes, you did tell me, but I'll need to make sure.
Well, and we have to do annual targets for
Okay,
everyone.
no, that'll work, we can break that up. So, okay, so you want the same thing for the first one? So it'll increase by 1% per year? Is that what you mean? Okay, we can do that. Not a problem. Yes, Arlen, you were right, I apologize. You were correct, Carla.
Again.
I said it publicly.
Yes.
I'm the Lily, okay. The industry certifications we're waiting, because that information is a little more convoluted, because we have to go back and the documentation on that piece is a little, so we have to go back and get those numbers. But what we did for dual credit, we'll do the same thing for industry certs. So you'll get an annual breakout of what the goal would be every year up until 2022 with an overarching.
We're just waiting for those numbers.
Because the numbers we were looking at again were in totality, so the numbers were huge, but that's not actually what the senior class did. And each class that graduates will be a little different.
Yeah.
And as we increase dual credit with the early college and health science and all that other stuff, those numbers will look different.
Y'all are so smart. So basically, that's the explanation of why this isn't going to match the state, is because this is actually about graduates.
Yes.
Correct.
That should be the. So can I ask this question on goal 1? Are those percentages? Are you starting with?
So what's going to happen is, and in the end, once we get all the numbers, we may need to adjust the percentages of the goal, because we need to get the numbers in.
So we're not sure what the numbers are.
Right,
We're
we
going to
want
keep the
to
wording.
give an actual number, so that way, because we'll take the total, the graduate, the taper for the first measure, and then we'll take the number from the second measure, set the number from the third measure, and we'll kind of average those out. The only thing that's not in the progress measures is military. But reason being is because I can't force kids to go into the military. We can, they're going to choose what direction they go. Now we can, really encourage dual credit and build those numbers because that makes sense. The military is one of those we can't force it, but we can provide that number in totality towards the percentage of kids that qualify. We'll include that as far as.
Okay, so you're saying you're not including it as a progress measure because of that reason, but it will be included in the total number.
And the total
So
number.
we keep the
because
goal
that's
language the
goal.
same.
Right, because
the
he
goal
was
numbers in totality.
I qualify 100 students that they qualify for that, but only 22 went.
Right, sure.
But
Yeah, you
that
don't want
should-
to. So, okay, so let's go back to, because you had brought this up earlier. So is this language exactly the way you are calculating it now? Is it exactly right? The percentage of graduates who will qualify for it. Is that right? Or do we need to change that language? I want to make sure we have the exact language in the goal.
How long do we have to change this thing?
Well.
I mean, we have to, I mean, like.
And the only reason I'm saying is because it is really because when we talk about qualify, we couldn't figure out how to measure that.
Okay.
Because we can go back and we can pull, because we do SAT everybody, so we can pull that number. But just because they didn't qualify SAT doesn't mean they don't qualify TSI at a community college.
That's right.
Community college standards are way lower than a UT or a UTSA or whatever.
Right, and I guess that's why we put community college and university.
Because there's a, right, and it's a different structure, so just because, there's a lot of just becauses, and a lot of variables. And so we have to kind of nail down and not overcomplicate it and try to simplify a tracking mechanism that's going to be fair and as accurate as possible, but obviously.
So we're using
How do we measure the 62%?
But it doesn't say that, right?
How did we come up with it?
Oh, I got that from Angelica Melendez based on the 2016. When did we meet? Or the year before that, 2015 maybe, whenever that was. Anyway, whatever she had, and it was a spreadsheet that she.
So I'll have to give her to find out what that calculation is and adjust it.
Right, and that's how I got 62%.
So, yeah, so we want to get a real baseline with real numbers.
Right.
It's something that we can track easily, so
Yes.
if rural areas in we're all long gone, that person can pick up and, oh, okay, this is what it is, and it's just easy to follow.
Can I ask this question just real quick, but I don't want to lose this. So are we actually saying who will qualify for university or military, but who will enroll in community college and complete ministry certification?
The reason I struggle with enrollment is because I cannot force anybody to enroll. We can prep them and make sure they're qualified to choose whatever
So
they
we
want
want
to
to keep
choose.
it qualified then. But
Yeah, we
industry
just-
certification is,
That we can push
That's
through
your-
our programs. Yeah, that, they have to complete that.
so we can say who will qualify for community college / university military and
Or complete an
complete
industry certification.
industry. Okay.
At least one industry certification, we can do that.
Then I just want to make sure, however we're measuring it, since we're not following exactly what the state is and that's what y'all are doing, I think it's really.
So it may be, and how it looks is when it's all said and done, is the percentage of graduates who will qualify for community college and university enlist in the military or industry, or earn an industry. Because the enlistment, again, we can't control the enlistment money.
Yeah.
But we can count their accomplishment.
So is it enlist or? No.
It would be
Qualified.
enlist. Yeah, but the thing is, we can't measure how they qualify.
Yeah, so it'd have to be.
Because each branch is different as well, and not everybody takes the
So it's
aspect.
qualify, enlist, or earn, is what we're saying. Okay, Diana, you got that?
We'll be able to give you like a more, and that's local
Right.
accountability.
And now it's captured in the goal, so then no matter what changes at the state level, we know that's how we're calculating it. is based
So
on
we're
those
we're
exact
checking
metrics.
we're holding ourselves accountable for our parameters. So.
Great job, team one, let's clap, applause.
So, Lee, can you share that with Diane?
They're typing it right now.
Do you have everything?
Yes, I
Okay.
have.
Okay, perfect.
So who else needed to come back?
So did we need to hear from 2 and 3? Y'all, all y'all
So
did was go back and
y'all, I
do-
want to make
y'all were
sure
done,
y'all,
right?
just for the people who did constraints, the constraint itself does not need to have a goal of this, but the measures do. So the constraints themselves we're all good. It's the measurements, it's the CPMs below it, have to have a target and all that stuff. Just want to make sure. Is anybody, I know, I think, who's still workshopping? This one?
Attendance.
Go check on them, see if they're ready to come back.
I think they're back there sometime.
Are they good? Okay. If you can, so we can get it. If we can, so we can. If you don't have the data, and we have to go back and send it, but if we can get it done now, here, let's knock it out.
Everything was put on paper.
Everything was done. Now. How are you feeling about everything? Do you feel like it's better in the front? Yeah, so don't you think it's like?
They didn't have good work.
They're all typing in there. Oh, they are?
Yeah, they're live. No, it's a good conversation. I think all the time.
Did you split up those numbers or?
Okay, so that's.
Everybody hears why, and now there's a reason, there's rationale, everybody understands the rationale, it's been articulated very clearly. Otherwise, my question comes up here, we're in a different setting, and it's like, oh, I don't want to go that way. Right.
And then,
It's actually.
and then 86.7 also.
So basically, we want to see
Okay, so if you want to go to your table, this is, you touched it in the agenda.
If you had some changes made in whole group, can you please check with Diana and make sure that she has those changes recorded?
And if you need to make, like, whatever you need to, like, need to come back and do data targets, put that on there, that way we can make sure that we're up on the, like, what data do we need to look for, what target,
Diana, did you put the link on the agenda?
Yes.
The afternoon?
On the afternoon agenda.
Okay, so after Googlers, if you will go to the afternoon agenda,
We updated in our original document.
Googlers or sub.
they know everything.
If you'll go to the afternoon agenda, what's it called, Diana?
Board goals, constraints, and progress measures workspace at the 2:30 time slot.
Okay, it's the 2:30, it was linked at 2:30. I mean, it's at the 2:30 time slot. If you find that and go into it, that's where now we're putting our funds.
So I think attendance is coming back for some feedback, yes?
For help.
Help.
Help. We'll put our life preserver.
And there's
Oh, yeah,
out there.
yeah.
You want,
What was the library? I forgot that. The library.
I'll have a materials person at your table. Team leaders, you might need to send somebody out to get snacks for your table. If you have a materials person, you can send them.
Make sure y'all have enough snacks for your table.
Just to make it down the home stretch. Cookies and chips, drinks, water. It's on the afternoon. I'll just put a link up. Will you create a short link?
Yes.
Create a short link and I'll put it on the slide.
For the
Workspace.
Yeah, some of our people It's,
Okay, there's a short link to that doc.
Thank you. So if you could let me know the which one?
Sorry.
But if Diana has your changes, you don't have to worry about it.
You keep doing that. It happens with these systems. We'll take that.
Would you add I between the S and W?
Oh.
It's also right here.
If they graduate, wouldn't they qualify for any of this thing? Or community orientation just because they graduate? Because if they
Attendance, are you ready?
Are you waiting on this?
I thought y'all were gonna, y'all needed some feedback or
You were waiting on everybody else?
that y'all needed some feedback or something.
Well, we just,
Okay, we'll tell you what we're doing.
Yes?
You want to put it on
Can y'all,
put it on our slide?
can you put up the,
Well, I don't have their
Constraints.
latest, whatever they.
Yeah, we've been putting it in there.
Oh, on the slide deck? Oh, on the work. The latest. That's which one you're.
Go back.
Put back one more. We're unguided.
Remedial part.
Sir. Well, we could put the percentage super high, and then everybody would be mad at us. Denise would be mad. And we, when we say the school needs to be at 97%.
I can go ahead and start talking. Yeah, right.
Yep, try it now, Shannon.
Yeah, that should be it. Where's the one on the agenda?
Yeah, try it again. Try it one more time.
That was it? Yeah. That's all right.
There, right there.
that one?
That was the original.
Are you trying to get to the one that I made the adjustments on?
Yeah, we're trying to get to the one we were just working on.
Was it in your team folder?
No.
So Shannon, if you refresh the
Jump to the
agenda
one from the agenda.
Refresh the agenda.
and then click on that. The bottom one. That one.
Yes.
Why is it not doing it? I'm sorry. I just copied and pasted it again to make sure. It won't go above that. Just because it was copied. I mean, the one.
Okay, it does. There it is.
Here from here.
Right there.
There we go. Okay. So we've changed, added the baseline and the goal. So the overall student attendance rate will increase from 93.6% to 95.4% by 2020. And then we adjusted, I forgot to put the word "two" in there a couple of times. Student attendance rate at elementary increased from 94.98% to 96%. Middle schools from 93.6 to 94.5, and high school 90.15 to 92.5.
That was,
So, wait a minute. But I thought the constraint didn't have to have the
it
target.
doesn't, it doesn't.
The progress
I
measure.
think that was shared earlier, but that was,
You may have been in workshop. Yeah, so the constraint doesn't have to have the,
yeah. So you're okay with the concern that it was?
right. But I think you want to allow student absent, right, student?
Yes.
Yeah, so just, you would just change it, allow the student absent rate. That was the only thing I think we needed to add.
The student absent.
The student absent.
We're flipping it to attendance rates, so student absence.
I'm sorry, yeah.
The student attendance rate.
Right.
Okay, then we could say decrease.
Decrease, yeah.
You have to word the constraints as constraints. Okay. Right? Because it's increasing.
Well, I mean, the original one actually had it the other way around. It was the student absence rate.
Right, but that's, okay, y'all changed it to attendance, right? So I'm flipping the way the constraints are. Right?
Right.
Okay, to match your progress measures.
So then we still have to go back then, and you're saying to put in your target on the.
Progress measures.
Progress measures.
On the progress measures. Well, I mean, you just have to, all you have to do is, you don't have to do this right now, because all that has to happen is they need to divide it out and put it in. So we're trying to get concepts today, if we're good on concepts, that's great. And then everybody can get all these individual targets.
So the question is, the 96, 94.5, and the 92.5, the question is that
Yes.
something that we could,
That's the question.
tangible, that's what we needed to know, because
We,
obtainable, excuse me, obtainable.
92.5.
What has been the trend?
It's been downward trends.
Yeah, this
3 years
is
ago.
aspirational, I will say.
This
Three
is
years
very,
ago.
very ambitious.
Yeah, but 3 years ago, that
Because
was
the-
at
yeah.
92.5.
I think that's very ambitious. But wait,
The,
the high school is at 90? When was it not 90?
Hold on.
This year.
Hold on.
Right, that we finished.
Overall?
South San High School in
Oh.
2014-15, the attendance rate was 93.29%.
14, 15.
In
Yeah, but that's when we could
15-16,
hold-
92.4%.
That's when we could hold parent, that's when it was criminal, whatever the thing was.
90.98 and then
When the state attendance changed, right?
So it ended at 90.3 was this year,
90.03.
for this year.
What is it, 90.03?
For this year.
90.03.
So what has
changed in attendance?
Read it on that.
Okay,
Gilbert,
that
you
could-
wanna
we got
share?
two different spreadsheets.
Gilbert, do you want to share what changed, like,
So,
with the criminal, whatever, holding the parents
So
accountable?
before 2015, it was really easy to take a parent to court. They were absent, give them a warning notice. As soon as they were absent a couple more times, you just submitted everything to the courthouse. But before 2015, the courts were so backlogged sometimes that I wouldn't even go to court with a parent for 2 months. And because we weren't doing any interventions, we weren't trying to find out what was happening at home. And so in 2015, they changed the law and said, you got to investigate, you got to do interventions, you got to do all these things. They decriminalized kids going to court, not the parent. You can still charge the parent, but you got to prove that the parent is negligent in what's going on with the child's schooling. And at the courthouse side, you have a prosecutor who looks, because we used to go to justice of peace, now we go to municipal court. So you have a prosecutor who looks at all your cases, an actual prosecutor. And she's looking through it and she says, you didn't give this to me in time. You waited too long. Rejected. I remember one, the kid wasn't going to school for, I think it was 10, 15 days. Went to the home. Somebody answered the door, said, she's pregnant, she's not going to go to school anymore. Prosecutor rejected my case because I couldn't prove she was pregnant. Because there's certain things that you're exempted from. You're pregnant, you're homeless, you're the earner of the household.
So even though we're exempt from it, does that mean those absences don't count?
No, they count.
They count.
They count.
They should count.
They just don't prosecute.
They don't
Yeah,
prosecute.
they're prosecuting.
So this year,
No consequence. There's no.
so this year we submitted maybe 20, 25 criminal cases. They all got rejected. So, and on there, they're saying that we're not getting it to them quick enough. Like they wanted within 15 absences, the window. But when you have warning notice going out at 3, they want you to meet with the parents beforehand. They want you to do an intervention. At the high school, I speak about those absences add up very quickly. And so they want those interventions. And a lot of things that are going on, you do find out that there's a lot of things going on at home. You know, you have kids who are having a job. They can't come in at 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning because they're working at night. And so it's difficult to go to court because of all these constraints that they put on us.
And we're having to keep a lot of the students now that normally we would have possibly administratively withdrawn in the past. Because the way it's written is that you can only do an administrative withdrawal if the student's whereabouts are unknown after 10 days absence. There are some that just are not coming to school. So when it's that situation, you know, because I spoke with the state about it, you know, well then what did a counselor do to go to the house? What did other programs we involved to do to go speak with the parents? What, you know, we can gently encourage parents to come withdraw, but I mean, we can't do the administrative withdrawal. So it's easy when whereabouts are unknown, but there are a lot of students, we know where their whereabouts are, that we knock on their door and it's like 5 o'clock.
So what's preventing us from gathering all of this information in time? Is it lack of people or lack of not having enough people out there doing it?
When, let's say we're doing at the high school 30, 40, 50 warrant notices in a week, or 60, you have to give the parent at least 7 to 10 days time, I guess, to show up for a meeting. Out of those 50 or 60, maybe 15, 20 show up. Then you got to do a home visit on the 40 who don't show up. So if you're doing a home visit for 40, then you got the rest, you know, and there's somebody who's continuing doing the warning notices. But after a while, it's starting to add up.
Well, the big thing is parents need to understand how important it is to come to school every day.
But
You know,
if it's
and
so-
schools, yeah.
But if the courts are so lenient,
And so that's what.
so they're not helping us. They're not
Right,
helping us
correct.
to-
And so that's what happened,
You know.
like, whatever, in 20, yeah, and that's why it's.
They want to be intervention. So you go to court, and so I went to court several times this year with parents, but it's not criminal. It's what services can we provide you for free? Do you need drug counseling? Do you need, you know, something? They offer those services. But when you have, that side and you have the prosecutor side, they don't talk to one another. The prosecutor could care less what these people are doing. She's just looking at the criminal case, and she doesn't care about, you know, she just says, you just took too long to get to us. But when you try to go to court to do an intervention with them, and you're not even scheduled for 3 weeks later, everything just starts getting added up. And it's just a process.
So it's going to be another step, because like RTI, the response to intervention that we do for students who are behind in reading and math, they've actually started RTI for attendance because they want to know what that causes, what the root causes of why the students are not coming, which takes time and resources.
I can see the frustration there. And to make it any lower is also a low expectation, and to make it any higher is just too high to attain. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, because we look at the high school number, and I mean, to make it higher. Yeah, and it's not, but the high school carries the majority of our students. I mean, you know,
High school
so.
has 1/4 of their students.
Yeah, so.
Exactly.
Actually, a little higher than that, about 30, close to 30.
And I guess I'm saying that we're not unique in it either, it's that other high schools are faced with the same.
Yeah, they want down.
Is this Bear County only?
No,
Yeah,
if you look
throughout
at
the state.
it's entire state. But if you look at the attendance rate of every single school district, every single school district has gone down. Every single one. So Northside's down, let's say the past 3 years, 1% on 100,000 students.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
For Northside. So, those factors.
So I'm curious why, so I see the profession, you have like a little bit, 2% for the high school, then less than % for the middle school, but then you went back up more than 1% is elementary. With elementary. These, the high school is a little bit over 2%. The middle school is 0.9%. So you think there's a going down, but then the 1% you jump up to over 1%.
We originally had it at 91.5% for the high school, but just based on pure numbers. And if we want to achieve the district numbers.
My comment is, you might be too aggressive for the elementary.
Too aggressive for the elementary? It's a 1% increase.
Because you have less-
Elementary is better, easier to control though, yeah. High school, like, you can't, like, I can keep them from walking out of my classroom.
One or the other.
They're tiny, you know.
Elementary and high school, one or the other is too aggressive.
I can't keep them.
Well, we were trying to also get 95%, right?
I'm wondering if 90 to 91.5 for the high school?
We had 91.5 is what we
We
had.
originally had that.
I would say 90 to 91.5?
I would say 91.
91? 90 to 91?
That's such a,
Well, or is this,
I just think
Should we
about,
change
I
the
just think
trend?
about how the high school affects the overall district. So,
Well, attendance is one of the few things that's very difficult for us to
Yeah,
control.
no, I know.
I mean, we've given away all kinds of stuff.
oh yeah,
And
incentive.
so it's kind of, so the goal is to get them there and keep them there, but it's also not something we can entirely control when you have parents go, well, what are you going to do, drag them out of bed?
Oh, no, I know.
That's what you do. I can't do it, but you can.
Yeah.
Kind of deal, so.
So is this not a, I mean, so what does the LSG say about the purpose of a constraint
The
then?
purpose of a constraint is to constrain the superintendent's actions in the progress towards a goal. So you have the goals that you have set out, and without, if you just say, achieve these goals, then there's a lot of things that basically you're giving the superintendent the freedom to do in pursuit of those goals. So the constraints are intended to put constraints around that, to say, these are the things that you don't cross these boundaries in order to get to these goals. So, I mean, if we don't feel like we can, if really you don't want to mess with having to look at the attendance rate increasing, I'm not sure this constraint is going to stick. Because the constraint right now is about, the way it was worded even before was about, you can kind of see it, the absence rate. That it had to either stay the same or decrease, basically. Yeah, it could not increase or remain the same. That's the way it was worded before.
Do we feel that the absence rate of, well, yeah, we need kids here in order
I
to.
mean, you gotta,
Academics and money.
Forget the money.
Forget the money, if we're gonna make that 60% equal.
We need everybody
You
here.
gotta have people there, I mean, and that's the research is
Yeah.
very clear on that. No doubt about it.
At what time is attendance typically taken? Is it still 10 o'clock?
10 a.m.
It is right now. But we have we're about to meet on that as well because we have the luxury of moving that we have it in policy that we can designate time outside of the 10 o'clock.
What would you think about, I'm just gonna go back, but what would you think about the superintendent will not allow the student to decrease? That's a constraint. That's a constraint that would not force you to write CPMs without increasing the attendance rate. I don't know, but.
Maybe you could, but just not- maybe not
Stuff
so
attracted. I mean, it'd be different progress measures. It was not allowed to decrease.
What would the progress measure be?
It would still be an increase, just not as much.
Or you're taking off if you could also remain the same. Or you can have a minor increase. I mean,
What do you think?
well, it's the board's decision, the board's
superintendent.
well, it's the board's decision about the constraint. I mean, the board needs to decide about the constraint.
I mean, do y'all,
Are we
do
keeping
y'all
it
as a board
We're
want
in
the
agreement
attendance?
with the constraint, I mean, we could remove or remain the same, but it still holds true as to that percentage points on your, because you still have to have a baseline, a target.
Yeah, but if it is not about increasing, it could be different. It wouldn't be, y'all are like worried about, ooh, going from 90 to 91.
Right.
But
It's
see,
a little
but
like
the
much.
concern's still there, but it's based on funding.
Yeah.
It's based on meeting goals. If we don't have money, then we can't do
I think you need to keep it, you need to have at least a little growth,
Yeah.
if you can, as a goal. Because if you were not to keep it, if it doesn't get measured, it doesn't get, enough. I do think you need to keep it, the growth should not be as high as it's been. Yeah, maybe that 91.5 or the 90, maybe just that 1%, 91.
Maybe 1%.
It's a consistent, significant numbers, and we've got percentage.
It does, yes. It takes a
Yeah.
lot.
One way or the other, it takes, I mean,
And all it
consistently
takes
have to
is
increase like
A
200
bad weather
kids.
day.
Oh, yeah, no, 1% is hard.
Oh,
1%
yeah,
is
and, all,
real hard.
and it can take, all it
And it
takes is
fluctuates.
what do you call it, a thread, you know,
Hey.
right, a thread on
We have-
Facebook that's fake, and all of a sudden.
We had the waivers that y'all approved for us to submit. Most of them were approved by the state, and that didn't push us up too much.
Moved it
And
Even with those days, are you serious?
Yeah, it's like a point.
Wow. So maybe in each one, if we make it 1% for each group.
Across.
Each one,
So 95,
yeah, 1%.
94,
Yeah,
91.
yeah, let's do
1%.
that.
At least it's growth.
Yeah, and at least it's growth, right, and by 2020, and then
The
it
goal
needs
is
to be
always
5
beyond
years,
that.
2022.
You want to go 2022?
Right, it doesn't have to be 5 years, no.
That's the deadline, and then you need to check.
Is it 1 and 3?
Oh, my bad, okay. Leave it, I'm sorry, go back to 2020.
So we're just gonna go 1%. We're okay with that. We just, that's why we brought, yeah. Okay.
They submit that.
They changed that.
Good job, team. Okay. Was that all we needed to hear from? Okay, everyone, if you look at yours right now, you've had agreement from the board on concept. I know so there's some data to add on some of these, but for everything else, you've had agreement on concept? Wow.
Ma'am, yes,
The board concerns are gonna go there?
no, we didn't go there.
All right.
They didn't change anything from that, we didn't look at that, so.
We didn't look at that, no.
We do have a recommendation, it sounded like from y'all, what was it? I know we had a recommendation.
If you wanted to add, the board will not allow whatever.
The closure schools.
And another constraint to the.
An efficiency constraint, 45%, yeah, which is,
3 to 5.
yeah, 3 to 5. We're still not. Awesome, okay, well, should we do a quick AD communication?
Yeah.
Close it out, okay, find somebody in the room you haven't spoken to yet today?
Reach across the room.
Find somebody you haven't spoken to, let them use the face.
I called you. Scott, I haven't talked to you all day.
Okay.
We'll be here, we need the partner.
Okay, here.
Ms. Lotus doesn't have a partner.
Yes.
Right here, Scott. Ms. Lotus needs a partner.
Perfect, okay. Choose who's gonna be A, who's gonna be B. Okay.
I'm right in front of the camera.
Choose who's gonna be B.
Okay, first question. Here's your first question. Share one aha that you've had from today. What's one aha you're like, oh, that you had from today, okay? B, you're gonna go first. Ready? B, go. What's one aha you had today? Okay.
make sure it makes sense. It feels like another way, right? There are three
Okay, very good. Okay, now, I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about this one, but round 2 is going to be, I want you to give your elevator speech. So you're leaving this room, okay, somebody that hasn't been here today, and they're like, what is all this SGS strategic design? What is all this about? What is your 30-second elevator speech to explain to someone who hasn't been here what all this is about? And if you name the football play, bonus points. Okay? Ready? I'm going to give you a second to think about it.
Who is talking?
We're going to start with A this time. Ready? A? Go. What's your 30-second elevator speech?
30-second elevator speech.
Goals, things the community wants, district or students, like that into something measure that would see progress over time. So hard work to provide kids the best education opportunities.
Okay. That was 30 seconds. If you just got started, just know that was 30 seconds. Okay. All right, we're going to switch. So B, your turn. Go B, 30-second elevator speech.
So I provided those three different frameworks to build our district.
Okay, awesome. All right, very good. Okay, so tell your partner thank you for playing. Go back to your table. We're going to Okay, when you get to your table, you're going to share your elevator speech with your team. Okay? Each person, share your elevator speech.
You need me? Okay. Choose one from your table. Share out. All right. Team 3, let's hear one of your elevator speeches.
Ours was that all of these.
I'm sorry. Okay, y'all ready? Okay, Team 3.
That all the pieces that were here today, that all comes down to the students' outcomes.
Oh, that's great.
And that all the four of us kind of brought it back to that.
That's excellent. I actually heard your team talking about that earlier, like one way this all goes together is it's all focused on students. That's great. Fantastic. Team 5, where are you? Team 5. Let's hear one from your table.
Well, we kind of said the same thing, and I think that's what when I was talking to Mr. Rodriguez, I think that's why the alignment went as smooth as it did, because everything was focused on students.
That's great.
So we were trying to align it, and that's why it made things easier for a lot of groups.
That's really a good point. Yeah, because what you're trying to do, that would be very difficult if really there were like personal agendas or different kind of agendas going on in the room. That's excellent. Very good. Team 4.
Okay, so we basically said is that the strategic design and everything that we talked about today is basically ensuring that students have all students are getting that high-performing education in every seat that they're in. So regardless of what type of educator they're with, whether it's tutoring, whether it's one-on-one instruction, they are getting it from everybody. And then, and also that we're giving our educators the tools to be successful by that pencil to help them go back in and pull that information out.
That's great. That's a great thing to make sure, when change is happening, it's really important to communicate that it's not just, here, do this, right? There's supports to make it happen.
Right.
Sometimes the fear of change is like, I'm just going to have something dumped on me and then I have to figure it out. So I think it's important to communicate that there's supports for all of that as well. Okay, awesome, that's great. So y'all still have to name your football play. Did anybody do that?
Name the football player?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't hear what Robert,
Oh, you missed it.
you missed it, like,
That was great.
Robert Zamora.
Did you hear the whole?
Okay.
That's right. You named him future superintendent. At that point.
He's the key doctor.
He gave it to the office. You have to tell the board that there's already done.
Robert.
So the challenge is
Yes.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, so Savannah has like today.
okay, let's hear it.
So the name of this play is Piñata No Más. Piñata No Más. Piñata No More. All right? Because really think about this. At one time, we were the piñata of school districts. We really were. People criticized us. No more. This work really outlines what we're about today. And that's why I call it Piñata No Más.
All right, take my word.
Okay, so can I have a little golf clap for Shannon and Gage? I love working with them because they facilitate it where it's ours, it's not some program, it's not a product, it trains us to make it ours. So with that, do we have any announcements? We have a board meeting tomorrow night. Principals who are here, we have that deep data meeting Thursday, starting at 8. It's the Denise, our data diva, from 8 to 10. And then from 10 to 5, we have an awesome program that we found that actually shows adding value and it tracks it back down to the SE. So it'll go, so when we talk about high quality seats, you will know as a principal exactly which teacher, you may have, oh, we got a C as for AD, but these students, like 15 in this class, lost value with this, okay? And it goes back to which SE they lost value, which they gained value, so it's very, very good. So I think, Lee, you're sending the whole team, right, on Thursday? So pass it on to, where did Nikki left? Okay, oh, she told me that, but like pass it on to, like if they want to, Lee's bringing everybody, I never turn anyone away for PD. Directors, you want to come in, come. I never turn anyone away. Anyone who wants to come, they're always welcome. So we have that on Thursday. Next week is Leadership Development Academy where all the principals are all together. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think that's all I have. Sir?
And we're hosting PD next Monday at 5:30 at Don Pedro's. So all the staff is invited.
Yes.
PD.
Okay, yes.
Details will come.
Details will come. Yes, so yeah. JC will notify his directors. Lorraine, I'm going to have you notify our directors and I'll notify principals. 5:30, Don Pedro's for professional
Monday,
development.
23rd.
Monday the 23rd. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And
Oh, yeah, you got to conclude me.
So the time is 5:03 PM. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion by Ted.
A second. You can't say. All right, thank you.
Oh, that's right, because you're.
One joint meeting.
That's your
That's